morning. My name is Tony Byrne. I've been in our business for 12 years as a recruiter, a trainer, and an owner. And today we're going to talk about the placement process. Now, the process itself is very basic. It's the problems that we solve with the process that are complicated. Now, a trainer measures his success in the results of the people that he trains. And over the last 10 years, recruiters that I've trained as my own employees have billed over $25 million. I know that what I teach works, but it takes hard work and discipline. What I'm not going to teach you today are shortcuts, tricks, quick fixes, glib phrases, because I know they don't work. I'm going to teach you tactics and strategy. Everything I teach you today, you will be able to take back to your desks with you and use to make placements. Now, I'd like to see the hands raised of everyone in this room who is in this business because they want to make a lot of money. Good. I sure hope you made that decision, because there are a lot easier ways to make $30,000 a year than to come into this business. Don't come into this business to earn 30. Come in to earn 50 or 75 or, God forbid, 100. Later on today, we're going to talk about what the big billers bill, and you can earn a lot of money on what the big billers bill. Now, if you want to make a lot of money, if you want to be successful, I'm sure that you have role models who are successful. Perhaps you've read books about people who are successful. What are some of the characteristics that these people have in common? What is one? Terry?
A drive for professional excellence.
Yes, they have drive. What else? Mike?
Positive attitude.
PMA, they are believers, optimists. Yes, Bill?
A high energy level.
Very high energy level. They can last much longer than normal people. Mike?
Big egos.
Big egos. They believe in themselves, you bet. Carol?
They're enthusiastic.
Very enthusiastic, and enthusiasm sells. Remember that. Kathy?
Self-starters.
Yes, nobody has to roll them out of bed in the morning. Ken?
They need to have professional ethics.
Ethics? Well, wait a minute. I'm sure we all know people who are unethical, who are successful, but you'll never meet anyone unethical who builds a career in this business. Never. Mark, characteristics successful people have in common.
Extend their goals.
They push them out further. That's right. That's why they're always working towards goals. The goals are always out in front of them. Ken, characteristic.
They're planners.
And that's how they get to the goals. They are planners. Paul, a characteristic successful people have in common.
Time managers.
Time managers. That's why they get so much more done than most of us. Yes, John.
They're creative people.
Paints pictures, writes plays.
No, they're problem solvers.
Problem solvers. They can find 5 or 6 different ways in and out of a problem. John.
Risk takers.
You mean riverboat gamblers?
No, not at all.
Calculated risk takers. That's right. Lynn.
They have desire.
Incredible desire. You know, given 5 people with the ability to succeed, the one who is going to make it is the one who wants it badly enough. Because he wants it badly enough, he has a consequent willingness to pay the price. And just to leap forward in our day, what is the price for success in our business? Hard work. That's it. It is hard work. Now, are they lucky? Successful people, are they lucky, Brian?
They make their own luck.
They look lucky, don't they? You just can't be lucky that often. That's right, they make their own luck. Do they ever fail, Ken?
Yes, they do.
You bet they do. That's what happens when you keep trying all the time. Of course you're going to fail. And what happens when they fail?
Pick themselves up.
They get back up. They are resilient, and they are always learning from their mistakes. These are some of the characteristics that successful people have in common. I want you to tuck those away, because as we go through the day, we're going to build on those. We're going to find out that a good recruiter has all of those and many more. Before we start talking about the recruiting process itself, the placement process, I want to discuss 4 building blocks on which we are going to build a good recruiter. Building block number 1, attitude. You are who you think you are. You know, when I go around a room of 100 recruiters and I say, tell me quick, what is your billing goal for this year? What number do you think 9 out of 10 recruiters tell me? What number? Do you think that's because 9 out of 10 recruiters in this country have a maximum billing potential of $100,000? No, sir. It's because they go to work for a firm and they see the guy sitting next to them saying $100,000 a year, and they hear everybody else saying $100,000, and they figure, well, that's what the job is. It's $100,000 a year. And they set a goal for themselves of $100,000, and that's what they build. Whether they get there in July or November, it becomes a self-fulfilling goal. It becomes a ceiling that they can't push beyond. Well, by the end of today, I want to take your goals and rip them up and move them higher. You are capable of billing more than you're billing now. Most recruiters are capable of billing 2 or 3 times what they're billing now. You are who you think you are. You just have to know how to do it, that's all. Attitude. You sound like who you think you are. One of the toughest things to do is to get a new recruiter to say, this is going to cost you $5,000 or $10,000 to a client company. The new recruiter would be much more comfortable saying to that client company, this is going to cost you $1,000. Isn't that true? Sure. Well, guess what? The client company thinks it's worth $10,000. How do we know that? We know that because client companies spend $10 billion a year on search fees. That's how we know it. They think it's worth $10,000. You ever figure out how many hours it takes to conduct a search? Any of you guys? 12 to 15 hours to conduct a search. Let's say that you spend 20 hours actually doing that search and you get paid a $10,000 fee. Math majors, how much are you getting paid per hour? $500 an hour. You know any attorneys who get paid $500 an hour? Very few. You know any accountants who get paid $500 an hour? I don't know of any. But when the client company pays you $10,000 for 20 hours of work, they're paying you at the rate of $500 an hour. They value the service highly. I want you to value it just as highly. Attitude. You're here because you're special. You're here because someone hired you to come into this business. Someone who knows that 999 out of 1,000 people can't make it in this business. It's too tough. It's too competitive, but you're here. That means that you are special. That means that you are smart enough, clear enough, high enough energy, competitive enough to succeed in this business. You're special. Now, you're going to meet companies. You're going to meet candidates who are going to tell you how to do your job. Here's how I want to work with you, recruiter. No, sir. Walk away from candidates and companies that are unwilling to work your way. They're paying you for your expertise. Let them let you demonstrate your expertise. One of the most distinguishing characteristics of the big billers is that they have maximum control over the company and over the candidate. Attitude. You're capable of billing more than you are. You're special. You know what you're doing. Building block number 2, capacity for hard work. The harder you work, the more you'll earn. It is a straight line. Now, of course, there's always somebody out there listening to me who says, well, what he really means is that we should work smart, right? Let me tell you how you get to $100,000 a year in billing. You do it by working hard, by working 9, 10 hours a day, sometimes 6 days a week. You know how you get to $250,000 a year in billing? By working smart, hard. You never stop working hard. You get to 20 send-outs a month first, and then while you're still at 20 send-outs a month, you start working at the on the send-out to placement ratio. The recruiter who thinks that now that he's billing 100 or 150, he can start working fewer hours is going to fail. Now, you make your money on the telephone, not shuffling paper. And I mean on 5-minute calls, not half-hour calls. Yes, half an hour on the phone with a candidate that we're going to present to a company. Yes. Half an hour on the phone where we're taking a job order. Yes. Half an hour on the phone with a client that wants to shoot the breeze, because a client is everything in this business. But all other calls, 5 minutes on and off. Now, there is paperwork to be done. Mountains of it. Do it in the morning. Do it at lunchtime. Do it after you plan at night. Just don't do it during the prime time hours of the day. Under capacity for hard work, one last point. I got bad news for you. There is homework to be done every single night. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, Friday and Saturday we get off, and Sunday night. Homework to be done because you are competing with people who are talking to candidates at night. And if they are and you're not, they're speaking to more candidates than you are. Law of averages says they'll beat you to the good ones. They'll make more placements than you do. And there's another practical reason that we have to talk to candidates at home at night. What is it? Some of them just can't talk at work. That's right, just can't talk at work. Capacity for hard work. Building block number 3, listening. Harvard Business Review says 80% of your job is listening. Tune in to the tone of voice, the hidden objection. Don't interrupt candidates and employers. When the person on the other end of the phone is talking, don't be thinking about what you're going to say next. If you just listen, that candidate will tell you how to place him, and that company will tell you how to make the placement. And of course, that sounds real simple, doesn't it? Just listen. Well, I'll tell you, listening is hard work. You want to burn calories? Try keeping your mouth closed for a whole morning. It is hard to do. Don't feed answers. Experienced guys, tell me if this sounds familiar. You're talking to a candidate who earns $40,000, and you say, what's the minimum amount of money that you would accept to change positions? 44, 45? Or you're talking to a candidate who is about to give notice, and you say, is there anything your company could do to keep you? You know, what if they match the offer? Or what if they put you over in Larry's group? Feeding answers, don't do it. You new guys, you are great listeners because you don't know what you're talking about. And you ask a question and you listen for the answer. And what happens? You learn fast. And 2-3 months into a new recruiter's career in this business, you hear him start feeding answers. He says to the employer, what's the title for this position? Project engineer. Oh, you want someone to do this, this, and this. Or he says to the candidate, what do you do? I'm a senior tax accountant. Oh, you mean you do this, this, and this. Don't feed. Listen. And if you miss something, have them repeat it. If you don't understand something, have them explain it. Building block number 4, planning. Planning is the key to a well-executed day. When I go into a search firm to increase productivity, I don't work on the 9-hour day. I work on the 1-hour day. Because if I can get a recruiter to plan, I can double his number of phone calls, which is going to double the number of candidates he's working with, double the number of job orders, which theoretically should double the number of send-outs he gets. And of course, if I can double the number of send-outs, I can double or better the number of placements that he makes. Now, planning properly done takes 1 hour. I used to teach plan in half an hour, but you can't plan in half an hour. It takes an hour. 20 minutes to plan marketing, 20 minutes to plan recruiting, 20 minutes to plan follow-up. Follow-up is setting interviews, briefing, debriefing candidates and companies, checking references, closing, negotiating, and interviewing. And it's that follow-up activity that breaks a recruiter's concentration. See, a recruiter is marketing or a recruiter is recruiting, gets one of these incoming debrief calls, handles it for 20 minutes, forgets where he was, and the whole day is shot. Well, if all your calls are written out, you can come in, hit the phones in the morning, handle those spontaneous interruptions, go right back to whatever it was you were doing. Now, typically, recruiters are poor planners. Why? Because it's boring. Thank you. That's right. Recruiters like to be where the action is, where the excitement is, which is on the phone. But big billers plan all the time, every day. You know why? Because they can't get their volume of send-outs handled and their volume of telephone calls done unless they're all planned the night before. You see, a big biller spends more time in a day just setting up interviews than most of us spend in the office, period. Just setting up interviews. I have met recruiters, office support recruiters, who get 100 send-outs a month. Yeah, she's an animal, but she gets 100 send-outs a month. Now, of course, the most send-outs I've ever seen an executive-level recruiter get is about 45, and I'd be thrilled to death if you get 20. But even to get 20, you have to plan so that you get not only those send-outs done, but all the other activity that's going to go along with it, the results of those send-outs. All right, on those 4 building blocks, attitude, capacity for hard work, listening, and planning, we are going to build a good recruiter. Ready? Ready. Class starts. Let's talk about the 30 steps of the placement process. I am going to list them. We're going to zoom through them, and then we're going to go back and discuss them one by one. Step number 1, take a complete job order. And I emphasize complete, because if it's not complete, you're going to wind up having to go back to the employer several times during the course of this search to get more information. If it's not complete, you're not even sure you should be working, or I'm not sure you should be working it. Step number 2, make a recruiting plan. Recruiting plan is going to tell us who are we looking for and where do we go to look to find him. Step number 3, do a file search. We can find that candidate in the files. Let's do it. Let's not overcomplicate it if we don't have to. But unable to find them in the files, we now go to step number 4, which is name gathering, digging, fishing, sourcing. This is identifying candidates for our position who are not in our files. Number 5, we're going to contact that candidate. Number 6, profile the candidate. Now, very often, 5 and 6 are going to be the same step. But sometimes 5 and 6 are not the same step. We contact them this afternoon. We profile them this evening. We've come up with a candidate who is qualified and interested. So number 7, we are going to present that candidate to the employer. Employer likes what he hears. So number 8, set up the first interview. First interview is going to take place tomorrow. So number 9, we are going to prep the candidate for the first interview. Now, folks, from now on, I want the word interview to equal win in your brains. Every time you think of interview, I want it to equal win, because we're going to prepare our candidate to go in and win, not just cope the way most candidates do. Step number 10, we are going to prep the employer for the first interview. You know, recruiters spend a lot of time prepping the candidate to meet the employer's needs, and almost no time preparing the employer to meet the candidate's needs. Candidate has needs too. He has personal needs. He has professional needs. Let's prepare that employer to meet his needs. All right, the first interview takes place. The candidate goes to the nearest telephone booth and calls you immediately afterwards. In step number 11, we debrief the candidate from the first interview. Candidate says, yes, I want it. I like that company. I want to go to work there. Step number 12, we debrief the employer from the first interview. He says, yep, could be our guy. Step number 13, we set up the second interview. And number 14, check references. All the time, check references. Now, there are circumstances where those references should be checked prior to the first interview. We'll discuss those later. But for the sake of our model today, we are going to assume a second interview offer. And in the case of a second interview offer, there are practical reasons why we want to check those references after the first interview. Okay, the second interview is taking place tomorrow. So number 15, second interview, prep candidate, parenthesis, trial closing. If they make you an offer tomorrow, $42,000, are you prepared to accept? When would you like to start? Number 16, second interview, prep employer, parenthesis, trial closing. Are you prepared to extend an offer tomorrow of $46,000? Paying attention to the numbers. And if he accepts, when would you like him to start? Number 17, confirm the second interview with the candidate and the employer. Second interview takes place. Number 18, debrief the candidate, parenthesis, closing. Remember, we were talking about a second interview offer, so second interview debrief is closing. Did they make you an offer? How much is it? Did you accept? When would you like to start? Number 19, debrief the employer, parenthesis, closing. Did you extend the offer? How much is it? Did he accept? When would you like him to start? And number 20, there's a step here called closing and negotiating. But this step doesn't start here, does it? It starts back in step number 5, when you present the position to the candidate. That's when you start closing him on a number. And it starts back in step number 7, when you present the candidate to the company. That's when you start closing them on a number. But it culminates here in step number 20, which is closing and negotiating, which results in step number 21, which is an offer, an acceptance, and a start date. Hey, this deal is closed. Take a long weekend. Give yourself a raise. Buy a boat. Huh? No, no. This deal is entering deep water right now. The most dangerous interview of all is coming up, the resignation interview. We're going to get right back to business. And step number 22, prep our candidate to resign, resignation prep. Candidate goes in to resign, calls us afterwards. Step number 23, resignation debrief. He says, yes, they tried to get me to stay, but I told them it was finished, final, over with. I'm out of here in 2 weeks. And if that's the case, step number 24, celebrate. Now, recruiters have different ways of celebrating around the country. Some recruiters ring bells. Some recruiters throw confetti. A lot of recruiters drink. I had a recruiter who used to play the Olympic anthem on a cassette every time that he closed a deal, and you should try it sometime. It felt great. Felt just great. Step number 25. Billing prep. Billing prep is call the person you've been dealing with and say, who do I send the bill to? Then call that person, say, please expect the bill, and when can I expect to be paid? State-of-the-art in fee schedules keeps improving. State-of-the-art in fee schedules today stipulates that payment of the fee must be received within 10 days or discounts and guarantees are voided. I hope that you all have that language on your fee schedules. I'm opposed to discounts and guarantees. But if you're going to give them away, at least I want you to have leverage on your fee schedule for prompt payment. In the absence of that kind of leverage, there is the opportunity for a company with a cash flow problem to make you a low priority payable. Number 26, fill out your billing paperwork. 27, stay in touch with the candidate for the next 2 weeks. You know, if his current employer wants to keep him, there's a lot they can do. They can appeal to loyalty, to guilt, to vanity, strong human emotions. Stay in touch with the candidate. Step number 28, confirm that the candidate has started. I know recruiters who routinely stop talking to their candidates after they've made the placement, and they never check to see if the candidate shows up at work. And they almost as routinely get their invoices back from the client companies with question marks on them saying, who's this guy? Stay in touch with them. Step number 29, stay in touch with the candidate and the new employer now that he's gone to work at the new employer. You know, presumably you've done a good job. This candidate's going to grow in that company. Company's going to be real happy with your performance and come back to you. This should be either the beginning of a long-term client relationship or a chapter in an ongoing client relationship. And number 30, get paid. You've earned it. Now listen, these are the steps in the placement process. You should do them all the time. Granted, in retrospect, maybe only 5 or 6 of these steps will have been important. But ahead of time, you never know which 5 they're going to be or which 6 they're going to be. A big biller is going to do every step every time because he knows if he doesn't, he'll lose some deals. And he'll never know which deals he lost. He'll never know which deals he could have closed if he'd done them all. Just be a mechanic. Do every step every time. Attach this list like a flight checklist to every file of every search you're working on and check the steps off as you do them. There's no way you can keep them all in your head with 8 or 9 different pieces of business. Check them off as you do it. Those are the 30 steps in the placement process. Okay, now let's go back to step number 1, which is take a complete job order. Now, no matter what your job order form looks like, every job order should contain the following categories of information. Category number 1, job description information, in which we want to ask, what is the title? What are the duties? Describe an average work week. Yeah, come on, Byrne, we know that. We know that. We want to get title and duties. Sure, that's obvious. Yeah, it is obvious, isn't it? But I've seen an awful lot of job orders with a title, 3 words, a number, and a recruiter's initials on them. And the recruiter is working that job order, and the recruiter shouldn't be. And you know what the trap is? The trap is that because we all specialize in an area, we may have worked this same job order before 5 times, or we may have done searches for the same kind of person 10 times before. So instead of taking complete duties, we assume we know what this title means. But I'll tell you this, if there's a slightly crooked spec in this job order or a slight additional spec, it's going to make a difference in who they hire. And if you haven't asked, what are the duties, you're not going to know about that crooked spec or that different spec. So ask, what's the title, what are the duties, describe an average work week, get a complete job description. Second category of information, compensation information. What is the salary range for this position? What's the low end? What's the mid-range? What's the high end? Come on, Byrne! We know that. As I go through this job order, I'm going to make an unflattering comparison between what I call the pro and the new guy. Now, I've had guys work for me with 20 years experience who take a job order like this. This is Pete the pro talking to his friend John, the director of operations at Kraft Foods. Hi, John, this is Pete. Hi, Pete. John, I understand you have an opening for a plant manager at your cheese plant. Is that correct? Yeah, Pete, that's right. John, what do you want? Someone who knows cheese processing and high-speed packaging? Yeah, Pete, that'd be terrific. What do you want to pay, John? 45, 46? Yeah, that'd be great, Pete. John, how about somebody from Carnation or Hunt West? Is that a good candidate for you? Oh, Pete, that'd be wonderful. Okay, John, I'll be back to you in a couple of days with a candidate. You ever heard anything like that before? Not us, not us. What just happened here? Huh? Pete just dictated a job order to himself. He said, what do you want, John, this? What do you want, John, that? And John just went, yep, yep, yep. And now Pete's going to work on that job order. But the new guy doesn't know any better. He gets complete title, duties, complete specs. Then we get to compensation information. Write this down. Follow me here. New guy says, what's the salary range for the position? Low, mid, and high. And John says, well, the low end is 40. Mid-range is 45. High end is 50. New guy says, well, John, if I find you someone who's doing that job right now for one of your competitors, but already earning 50, can you come up with any more money? And John says, oh, I'd hate to do that. New guy says, yeah, but could you? Could you come up with any more? John says, well, $2,000 maximum. Where are we now? 52, that's right. New guy says, John, do you provide a bonus? John says, yeah, this is a productivity bonus. It can be worth $1,500 the first year. Brings us up to what? New guy says, well, how about a company automobile? John says, nope, nobody here, not even the president gets a company automobile. We do provide a mileage reimbursement allowance of $200 a month. Let's round that off to $2,500 a year. And where does that bring us? 56, 56. New guy says, well, John, how about first review? When do you give the first review? And John says, well, the first review can be at the end of 6 months, and it can be worth 5%. Now, 5% on a base of 50 is $2,500. But the candidate would only get it for 6 months of the year, which is $1,250, which brings us up to $57,250. New guy doesn't know any better, says, John, do you provide profit sharing? John lights up. He says, we have been making a ton of money. There's been a check in everybody's envelope for the last 3 Christmases equal to 10% of their base. Now, 10% on a base of 50 is what? 5. Brings us up to what? 62,250. That's right. What does Pete think this job pays? 45, 46. Why? Well, because he told the guy 45, 46. That's why he thinks that. Pete's going to be looking for someone who is earning what now? 40. New guy's got a package of 62. He's going to be looking for someone who's earning what? 55. 55. It's decision time. John has 2 people sitting in front of them. One of them is earning 40. One of them is earning 55. 9 times out of 10, which one is the best candidate? 55, sure. Who's going to make this placement? The new guy. Why? Because he's got the best candidate. Why does he have the best candidate? Had more money to work with. Why does he have more money to work with? Because he asked all the questions. Get every dime of cash value in that package. It's very seldom that you're going to see $10,000 left on the plate after they've hired a candidate. They usually use up the whole package to get the best guy. Now, decision maker said to Pete, yep, 45, 46 is great. He wasn't lying. See, Pete asked a sloppy question. What do you want to pay, 45, 46? And he got a careless answer. John did what every decision maker does. He looked at the rec, and he looked at the mid-range of the salary range. Mid-range is 45. It was 40, 45, 50. He said, yeah, that's what I want to pay. Ask careless questions, you get careless answers. Ask specific questions, you'll get specific answers. Get every dime of cash value so that you can compete. Next category of information on our job order is fee. Fee clearance. I assume if we send you a qualified candidate whom you do hire, you'll pay our agency fee. Now, quote, the percentage and the dollar amount at the mid-range. Say at $45,000 of salary, our fee would be 30%, which is $13,500. Now, has anybody in this room ever had a company say, well, that's not what we pay? Huh? I want to editorialize about that for just a second. Do you know that 10 years ago fee cutting didn't exist? Did not exist. And do you know that it wasn't the companies who cut the fee? Guess who cut the fees? Recruiters cut the fees. Recruiters who couldn't compete on a skill level with good recruiters started going to those companies and saying, I'll work that job for a flat fee of $5,000. I'll work it for 10%. It never occurred to companies to cut the fees. Why would recruiters cut their fees? Lawyers don't cut their fees. Accountants cut their fees. Well, it didn't take them long to get the message, did it? Now you can't call 5 companies without 3 of them saying to you, cut your fees. Well, do you think it's going to stop here? Do you think that now that companies have gotten recruiters to come down from 30% to 20%, they're going to say, oh, that's enough. We're going to stop reducing their fees. We got them down low enough. No! They're going to keep doing it until recruiters say stop. And if recruiters don't say stop, we'll be working at 10% in 10 more years and 1% in 20 years. Draw the line. I mean, draw the line. Now, I want to tell you something. Every firm that a recruiter is working with at 20% is paying some other recruiter 30%. See, I've consulted for these companies. The Fortune 500 companies, the defense companies, the financial services companies, consumer products companies. I've been in the employment departments. I have seen the rate schedules. They're paying 14 firms 20%, 4 firms 25%, 2 firms 30%. You know those formidable 9-page statements of fee policy that they send you? Very official, aren't they? They're printed. Except for the space where the fee goes. That's typed in. Why do you think it's typed in? Huh? Why do you think? Because it's negotiable. It's different for him and for him and for him. It's different. Stop cutting fees. Why do you think some recruiters get 30% from these companies? Why do you think? Because they're good. Now, do the companies ever say to them, we want you to cut your fees? Sure they do. And what do they say back to the companies? They say, why should I give you this candidate for 20% when your competitor is giving me 30% for the same candidate? That's what they say. And do some companies ever say, take it or leave it? Yeah, they do. And what do these recruiters do? They walk away. And what do those companies do? They work with a recruiter, the 15%, the 20% recruiter, until he doesn't deliver. Then they come back to the 30% recruiter. This much I can tell you, because in the last 6 months I have been in dozens of firms, and I've spoken to recruiters from hundreds of firms across the country. There are offices full of recruiters across this country who never, ever cut a fee. Never cut a fee. All-star recruiters are like all-star lawyers. They get paid more. Hold out. You guys are capable of getting full fee if you'll just negotiate for it. You know what our problem is? Our problem is that we're always negotiating the amount of the cut. Think about it. Always negotiating the amount of the cut. We sit there waiting for the next cut, and then we negotiate the amount of the cut. Well, stop. Start putting pressure in the other direction. Go back to your offices. Get a consensus. Agree that come 6 months from now, April of '88, we are going to raise our fees, our minimum fees, 1%. You know, there are firms all across the country doing this right now with success. Firms that are notifying their client companies, come April 1st of '88, we are raising our minimum fees to 21%. What do you think the companies are doing when they get those letters? Nothing. It's in the future. It's a painless amount. That's how fees started coming down, in painless amounts. And look where they are now. So start raising them in painless amounts, but it takes consensus and it takes discipline. One person breaks the line, then everybody's going to break the line. Don't. Hold it at 21. Now, next time a firm calls you and say, hey, says, hey, it's that time of the year again, we're going to have to decrease your fees. I want you to tell them, look, what a coincidence. I was just picking up the telephone to call you. We're going to have to increase our fees because our costs are going up. You want to decrease them? We want to increase them. We're going to have to work this out. Stop negotiating the amount of the cut and start putting pressure in the opposite direction. Now, before we move on, same thing applies to guarantees. Do you know that 10 years ago, guarantees didn't exist, except in office support placements, accounting placements, and general agencies? They were the only places that guarantees existed. Well, then some firms started giving a 30-day money-back guarantee to gain a competitive edge, and that evolved into a 60-day money-back guarantee, which became the 90-day money-back guarantee today. Well, have you heard about the 12-month money-back guarantee? Oh, have you heard about it? Oh, you will. See, your client companies will be coming to you soon saying, look, this is what your competitors are doing, and we want you to do it too. They are not your competitors. They're people who have to give a 12-month money-back guarantee to get the business. They're not as good as you are. When have you finally earned your money? After 11 months and 30 days? If this deal blows up, if the candidate walks, or if the company doesn't keep a promise it's made, and the candidate leaves after 11 months and 29 days, should you have to earn that fee over? I don't think so. I think your money is earned when the candidate goes to work. Now, that said, even in the absence of a guarantee, if the deal goes away, blows up because of the candidate's negligence or my negligence, I'm going to replace him for free in the absence of a guarantee. Hold the line on guarantees and hold the line on fees. Fees should be going up. Guarantees should be going down. Unfortunately, right now it's going in the other direction. Fees are going down and guarantees are going up. Hold the line. Next category of information, recruiting information. Recruiting information, that's what we are, you know, we're recruiters. We find candidates to fill positions for client companies, and yet this category of information is usually blank on a job order. Why is it usually blank? It's blank because the recruiter works this kind of position all the time. He knows who the company was. He knows where the candidate is. Don't you? Well, from now on, when you're writing a job order, write it as if somebody who works a different discipline is going to work it. See, always get a complete roadmap, a roadmap that's going to tell you who you're looking for and where is he. Ask generic recruiting questions all the time. First, who is the candidate? What is the background of the ideal candidate? What's his education, experience? What's required? What's preferred? What kind of person are you looking for? That personal component is just as important as the background itself. That's who he is. Now, where is he? Ask these 4 simple generic recruiting questions. What industries would he be working in? What companies would he be working in? What would his department be within those companies? And what would his title be within those departments? You know, those are very simple questions, and it narrows the universe and leads us right to the candidate. But come on, Tony, I worked banking, and that guy would work in a bank. Yeah, and maybe 3 other kinds of companies, too, that you would never think of, but that the person doing the hiring would know about. So always ask, what industries would he be working in? Always get a complete roadmap. Ask generic recruiting questions. Now ask, are there any companies that you don't want him to come from? What companies would you most like him to come from? And is there anybody in particular you'd like to talk to? Anybody here ever had a company give you the name of a candidate they'd like to hire? Sure, sure. Happens more often if you ask. Boy, that fee sure spends well, doesn't it? When you make a couple of calls and make $10,000. Recruiting information. When we do the characteristics of a good job order, that is very often left to last because recruiters just don't think about taking roadmaps. Always get a complete roadmap. You know, the traditional way for a recruiter finding a candidate is to go to his boss's office and say, where do I find this guy? Well, I want you to take a job order as if you were standing in a phone booth in some state where you don't live, and we're taking a job order for some position you've never, ever, ever worked before. That's the way to take a job order. Next category of information, benefits. When we're writing our job order, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this. We want to know about hospital, life, dental, stock purchase, stock option, 401k, company match salary savings. At the office support level, we want to know about subsidized parking, lunches, transportation, anything that will add cash value to the position. But we're not going to spend a lot of time on benefits when we're taking the job order. Now, you know what? Most recruiters, if they've even gotten this much information, get off the phone now. Think about it. Most recruiters now have title, duties, money, background of the ideal candidate, fee clearance, benefit, and they say, oh boy, I got a job order. I'm going to go to work on it. But they don't have a job order, do they? No, this is not a job order. That's a spec sheet. And if all you have is title, duties, and money, then when you go to recruit candidates, all you're going to be able to present to them is title, duties, and money. And they're not going to be turned on by title, duties, and money. If you call a tax accountant and describe tax accountant, title, duties, and money, you're going to be boring 49 out of 50 of them to death. That is not the way to present jobs. It's not even the way to match jobs, by the way, to people. The way to present jobs to people and to match jobs to people is to have opportunity and company information so that we can present opportunities and companies so that we can match opportunity to type. And right now we have no idea what the opportunity is. We have no idea about the company. So let's ask, what is the next step up for this person? Where can he be in 3 years? Where can he be in 5 years? Tell me about the last 2 people who had this position. Where did they go? The investment banker recruiter says, to jail. Opportunities at companies. Why is your company a good place to work? Why should somebody who is happy, securely employed, quit his job to come to work for you? Tell me about your company. Opportunities at companies. That's what we want to present to candidates. Now, let's think about this for a second. We want to sell that. So we're asking our employer, what is the next step up for this person? Where can it be in 3 years? Where can it be in 5 years? And the employer says, the person who gets this job can move up 2 pay grades in 1 year and then go from division to corporate the following year. That's a superstar opportunity. Can we sell that? Huh? Sure we can. Who are we going to sell a superstar opportunity to? Superstars. You bet. You bet. We say, what's the next step up for this person? Where can it be in 3 years? Where can it be in 5 years? And the employer says, well, the person who gets this job can move up 1 pay grade a year for 2 years. Then he gets to compete with 3 other people for a management position. That's an average opportunity. Can we sell that? Of course we can. Who are we going to sell it to? Average people. See, 90% of opportunities are average. 90% of people are average. What's the next step up for this person? Where can he be in 3 years? Where can he be in 5 years? And the employer says, hold it. Hold it right there. Person you're replacing sat at that desk for 20 years. Died at the desk yesterday. That's why we're filling the position. We want someone else to come in there and sit there for the next 20 years and die at that desk. Can we sell that opportunity? Sure we can. To who? Somebody who wants the predictability, the safety, sure, the stability of that. Of course we can sell it. Now, you know what? The spec, the job description for the position that would leap up 2 pay grades in 1 year might be exactly the same as the job description for the person who would get to sit there for the next 20 years. In other words, the duties are exactly the same. And if you didn't find out about opportunity, you might wind up just matching spec to spec and sending out the person who wanted to sit there for 20 years on the leap up 2 pay grades. Or you might wind up sending the superstar on the slug position, and you don't want to do that. We want to find out about the company, too. Why is your company a good place to work? Tell me about your company. And the guy says, don't you read the paper? We're in the headlines every week. We are gobbling up our competitors. We have doubled in size in the last 6 months. Can we sell that company? Sure, that's an exciting place to be. You bet we can sell it. We say, why is your company a good place to work? And the guy says, well, you know, we are a quiet company. We've never been in the headlines. You've never heard of us before, probably. We've been in business for 50 years, making a toy. We have had the same president for the last 30 years, plus or minus 2 employees for the last 20 years. Can we sell that company? Sure, I just gave you 6 selling points. Of course we can sell that company. We say, why is your company a good place to work? Tell me about your company. And the employer says, don't you read the paper? We're in Chapter 11. We got product problems. We got turnover. We got autocratic management. And we need somebody in here desperately to help us with that. Can we sell that company? You bet we can. Of course we can. Who do we want? Lee Iacocca. That's exactly right, Mike. We want Lee Iacocca. We want a hero. We want somebody who's going to come in and turn it around. Now, if we didn't know, if we didn't have that company information, we might wind up sending out the person who wanted that nice, quiet campus to that Chapter 11 place. And boy, that would be a mismatch, wouldn't it? His specs matched, but the opportunity, the company, and the type didn't match. We want to find out about opportunity and company information so that we can sell the position better and so that we can match opportunity and company to type. Now, next category of information, interviewing information. We want to prepare our candidate to go in and what? Win. Win, that's right. And the way to prepare him to go in and win is to give him all the information ahead of time about who he's going to be meeting with and what they're going to talk about. So let's ask our employer, who will this position report to, and what's his or her background? You know, if we can find somebody who worked at the same companies or somebody who went to the same schools, that's common ground. And common ground is the beginning of good chemistry. Now let's find out about the interview itself. What is the interviewing process? How many interviews? With whom? Over what period of time? How long does each one last? What's the agenda for each interview? You know, if there are multiple interviews, I guarantee you there's a specific agenda for each interview. Perhaps your guy has to come in and interview with group, district, and division. Well, group may want to talk to him about his career to date. District want to talk to him about his plans for the future. Division might want to talk to him about the job he'd be doing at this company. Let's find out about the interviewers. Tell me about group. When he interviews, what kinds of questions does he ask? What kinds of answers does he like to hear? Who does most of the talking? How long has he been at the company? What kind of guy is he? Find out as much about the content of the interview and the style of the interviewers as possible. Ask, do you give any tests? Wall Street Journal says there are 10 times as many tests being given today as just 5 years ago. There are skills tests, aptitude tests, substance abuse tests, psychological tests, handwriting analysis, all kinds of tests. Fortune 500 companies are asking VPs with 30 years experience to take aptitude tests, and they don't like it. Some of them just won't do it. And if a candidate won't do it, you want to find out ahead of time before you spend 2 or 3 weeks working with them. Ask the employer, when do you make the offer? When do you make the offer? The employer says, well, we want to see 3 or 4 people first. Well, that's no answer. Ask the question again. But when do you make the offer? Well, after we see 3 or 4 people, we're going to bring one of the finalists back for a second interview to meet 2 group VPs. But when do you make the offer? Well, if the 2 group VPs like him at the second interview, we will send him home with an offer. Right here, where we're taking the job order, right now, we want to find out about what their timetable is for extending that offer. We either want to find out if there is a timetable, what is it? Or if there is not a timetable, we want to suggest one. You see, in order for us to bring this deal together, in order for us to broker it properly, to negotiate it properly, we have to be dealing with specifics. Specifics of dollars and specifics of time. Now we know that they plan to send the finalist home from the second interview with an offer. Let's say our candidate becomes a finalist, and the night before the second interview, they buy a week. Well, we know that means something because they've told us they intend to send the finalist home with an offer. But if we didn't know that they intend to send the finalist home with an offer, we wouldn't know what it means. We just figure that is their timetable. Find out exactly what the timetable is. How do you describe your company's image? How do you like to see a candidate dress? Last category of information, status. How long has the position been open? Why is it open? How many people have you interviewed so far? Describe the one you like best. Did you make him an offer? Or why didn't you hire him? Now, recruiters, is our favorite position one that's been open for 3 months and they've seen 22 people and made no offers? Huh? Is that our favorite position? No, absolutely not. Because there's a complete lack of what? Urgency. That's right. Now, of course, some recruiters will say, but Tony, that might be a great position to work. They might be ready to hire now. I don't know what gives you that impression. It's been open for 3 months and they've seen 22 people. Other recruiters will say, but I haven't worked it yet. Listen, today, if a position's been open for 3 months, good recruiters have worked it. Count on it. Count on it. They've broken their pick on that job order. And I don't want you to follow in their footsteps. No, we don't want to work a position that's been open for 3 months. We want to work a position that's been open for an hour. And they have to hire right now. Or better still, our favorite position would be one that's been open for 3 weeks. And they interviewed 4 people the first week, made one an offer, and he accepted. He was supposed to show up for work this morning. And he didn't. I mean, that's the ridiculous extreme, of course. That doesn't happen very often, but it illustrates the point. There's great urgency because they thought the position was filled, and they've demonstrated a willingness to work fast. They saw 4 people the first week, and they made one an offer. Now, let's talk about urgency for a second. It is very important to us that we have urgency, that the employer have an urgent need to hire. Now, what is urgency? Urgency is a desire on the part of the employer to get that person on board right now. It's got to be important to that employer. How do most recruiters determine urgency? Well, the recruiter says, is this an urgent opening? Isn't that true? Recruiter says, is this an urgent opening? And what does the employer say? See, have you ever heard the employer say no? Of course, the employer says no, then you're home. The employer says yes, and the recruiter drops everything and works on it for 3 days. That isn't determining urgency. Listen, I want you to make that employer pay for your effort. I want him to commit some time or effort before you commit yours. Here's how we're going to determine urgency. Ask the employer, how important is it for you to hire someone right now? That's almost as bad as, is it an urgent opening? That's a leading question. The employer will say, very important, very important. Is it important enough for me to drop everything and work on it full-time for 3 days and 3 nights? Well, the employer will think about that for a minute because, in effect, you're making him ask you to drop everything and work on it full-time for 3 days and 3 nights. He'll think about it. And if he says, no, it's not that important, don't work it. And if he says, yes, it is that important, say, great. Then I'm sure it's important enough for you to give me 2 hours on Thursday to see the people I find during these 3 days and 3 nights. Now, if that employer has an urgent opening, he'll be thrilled to death to give you 2 hours in return for 3 days and nights of your time. And if he doesn't give you 2 hours, don't spend 3 days and nights working on it. That is the test for urgency. It's almost 100% infallible. Make that employer pay for your time with time or effort of his own. That is the true test for urgency. Now, the last thing we're going to do on this job order, we're going to say to the employer, look, give me 5 questions that you would use to screen a candidate at the front of the interview. 5 questions. And give me the right answers. I will ask all candidates that I talk to these questions. How many should my candidate answer correctly before you want to see him? These are called targeting questions. They'll have to do with knowledge or skills or experience, things that would be second nature to the employer and to the candidate, but would not be second nature to you. Targeting questions. You see, one of my goals with you is to bring down your send-out to placement ratio. And the way to bring down that send-out to placement ratio is to make sure that your candidates are more on the money. And this will make sure that your more candidates are right on the money. Okay, that is the job order. Now, we've been talking about it for half an hour, 45 minutes. It actually takes about a half an hour to write a complete job order. to write a complete job order. And then, of course, what about for the new guy? The new guy is very often not going to be able to get the employer to sit still for all of that, is the new guy? Huh? So maybe the new guy should just take part of the information, go to work on that job order. Is that true? Absolutely not. You need every single bit of it before you go to work on it. Now, if you know that you're not going to be able to get that employer to sit still for half an hour, here are the questions that you ask first. Title, duties, money, and urgency. Title, duties, money, and urgency. And if those four line up right, then you make an appointment to speak to that employer again at lunchtime or after lunch or this evening, or an appointment to get in your car, drive over there, and talk to him. You must have all of the information before you start to work this job order. Now, we have written a job order. We have written a job order. But we're not ready to work it. Because there's a more important step than writing it. And what is that? Qualifying it. Very good, Rose. Qualifying it. That's right. You see, the big biller doesn't think in terms of writing it. He thinks in terms of qualifying it, because only by qualifying it does he decide whether or not it is worth working. So right now we are going to go over the characteristics of a good job order. Find out what characteristics make the job order worth working. Now, what are the characteristics of a good job order? Let's go to the back of the room. What is one?
How about complete specs on an employer's needs?
Complete specs, title, duties, job description, average work week. I don't want you working job orders anymore that just have a title, 3 words, a number, and your initials on them. What else?
Complete compensation information.
Complete compensation information. What was the difference between Pete and Mike? Or rather, Pete and the new guy. The new guy had much more money to work with than Pete because he got every dime of cash value in that package. What else?
A good ratio of the compensation package to the specifications.
Have you ever taken a job order for a $60,000 candidate, but they want to pay $40,000? Has that ever happened to you? Sure. Well, before you start to work that job, I want you to get those figures into alignment, because it's not worth working yet. I want you to go to your files and pull out 5 people that they've described and call them back and say, look, these guys are earning $60K. Now, if you want to pay $40K, here's what I can get for you. But if you want this kind of guy, you're going to have to upgrade the salary, come up with $60K.
Recruiting information. What kind of candidate do they want to see?
Roadmap. We want to know who they're looking for and where do we go to find this person. And remember, the trap of specialization is that you often assume you know who they're looking for, and you assume you know where this candidate is. Never make that assumption. Always get a complete roadmap. Okay, give me a characteristic of a good job order.
That the candidate exists.
Have you ever taken a job order that looks great on paper and you start to do the search and you realize there are 3 of these guys in North America? There's one in Maine and one in Kansas, one in Ottawa. You don't want to work that. You want to make sure there's a good candidate pool. You don't want to work needle and haystack searches. Paul?
You need opportunity and company information.
Opportunity and company information, something to sell besides title, duties, and money. We also need opportunity and company information so that we can match opportunity to type. Without opportunity information, we're matching spec to spec, and we're going to wind up making mismatches. That's right. Ken, characteristic of a good job order.
Fee cleared, full fee.
Fee cleared, full fee, and rec signed. Fee cleared, full fee, rec signed. Every time you take a job order, make sure that you ask, does anybody else need to sign off on this rec? Have you ever gotten to the finish line with a search only to find out that some guy didn't sign it and therefore they're not going to make a hire on this? You bet. Mark, characteristic of a good job order.
You've got to establish the sense of urgency to fill the position.
Urgency. You mean where you ask, is this an urgent opening? No. You want to make sure that that employer is paying for your time with his time and effort. Make sure you get a commitment of time from that employer before you start to work it. Characteristic of a good job order, Ken?
Cooperative employer.
somebody who's going to help you to make this placement, a cooperative employer. He's going to see your people. He's going to take your phone calls, going to give you feedback. You bet. That's very important. Terry, characteristic of a good job order.
Complete interviewing information, including the hiring process.
We want complete interviewing information so that we can prepare our candidate to go in and what? Win. That's right. Mike, characteristic of a good job order.
Decision-maker contact.
Decision-maker contact. We want to be working with the decision-maker, don't we? But have you ever called into a company, made a presentation to a decision-maker, and in a half an hour you get a call back from somebody at that company who says, "At this company you work with me"? Has that ever happened to you before? Well, you got a couple of choices there. You can go back over personnel's head, in which case you're going to make a lethal enemy, or you can turn your back on that company, which is turning your back on a source of a lot of business, or you can work their way. Now listen, if the law of the land at this company is work with personnel or don't work there, go ahead, do it, start there. You know, just as personnel can be your enemy, they can be your friend. Just as they can put your resume on the bottom of the pile, they can put your resume on the top of the pile. Just as they can shut the door in your face, they can open doors for you. Go ahead, start with personnel and build a relationship and start making placements and start visiting that company, or if you can't visit the company, just call them constantly. And every time you go out there, say to personnel, you know, I'd like to meet this guy, and I'd like to meet this guy, and I'd like to meet this guy. Let me tell you what happens. Over a period of time, if you are developing, if you are building a relationship with that company and making placements, you are going to wind up dealing with the decision makers, because they're going to come to you. They're going to say, who is this person who's putting these good people in our company? They're not going to want to work through personnel. They are going to want direct contact. See, the kind of relationship that I want you to build with a company is not built over one placement or 1 week or 1 month. It's built over months and years. It takes patience to build. But once it's there, it outlasts personnel. It outlasts generations of management. They come and go, but you stay. But watch out. There's a trap here. And the trap is one of complacency. You see, once it's working with personnel, there's a tendency to say, this is great. I don't need to meet higher levels of people. I'm making lots of placements right now. Well, I met a lady in Phoenix a few months ago who told me a story. She said that she had been working with a company for years. She was an office support recruiter. She had placed 50 out of 90 people at this insurance company in Phoenix. She had placed so many people at this company that she had the company's name on her license plate. She was working only through personnel. She had no manager level contact. Working with personnel, all her placements were office support. Personnel leaves. New personnel person comes on board. She makes one placement with the new personnel person. Placement walks in the first week. New personnel person says, flaky recruiter, cuts her off. And I got her about a month later. And she told me the story. And I said, no, stop the presses. I guarantee you the president doesn't know that this has happened. You're the most important resource this company has. Let's write a letter to the president. And she did, and she's back in good standing. He got her right back in there immediately, but the danger was proven. The danger of leaving that relationship at personnel. In a larger company, she might never have gotten back in again. Go ahead, start with personnel, make friends, use them to meet higher levels of people. Make sure you force that relationship higher. All right, those are the characteristics of a good job order. Before a big biller is going to work this job order, he's going to say, does it have complete specs? Not just a title, 3 words, and a number. Do we have complete compensation information? Do I have every dime of cash value so I can buy the best candidate? Do I have a good ratio of money to specs? If they're asking for a $60,000 candidate, are they willing to pay $60,000? Do I have a roadmap so I know who they're looking for and exactly what industries, companies, departments, and titles, where to go to look? Do I have opportunity and company information so I can sell more than title, duties, and money? Is the fee cleared? Full fee, rec sign? Does the candidate exist? Not just 3 of them in North America. Is there real urgency? Is this employer willing to commit some of his time in return for my time? Do I have a cooperative employer, somebody who is going to help me to make this placement? Do I have complete interviewing information so I can prepare my candidate to go in and what? Win. And we want to make sure that we have decision-maker contact, but that's the only one of these characteristics that we are going to give ground up front. The only one. We will work for that. When we have all of these, we have a complete job order and we're ready to fill it. Okay, we have taken a complete job order. Now, all we have to do is fill it. We fill it by recruiting. Recruiting is hard. If it was easy, they do it themselves. As a matter of fact, the easy ones, they do themselves. They do it by advertising, by internal referral, by walk-in. We get the tough ones, the ones they can't fill themselves. That's why you earn so much money. Now, when you are recruiting, I want you to follow this format. Number 1, make a recruiting plan. Number 2, do a file search, matchups. Number 3, name gathering, otherwise known as digging, fishing, sourcing. Number 4, contact and profile the candidates. Number 5, here's a formula. 75 candidate conversations over 3 days and 3 nights equals 1 completed search. That's executive level office support. It would be 25 candidate conversations over 1 day and 1 night equals 1 completed search. Number 6, both executive level and office support, your goal on each search is 3 send-outs. And number 7, you want to work 10 searches a month, executive level, and 20 searches a month, office support. Now, let's go back to step number 5 and 6 for a second. 75 candidate conversations over 3 days and 3 nights equals 1 completed search, and your goal on each search is 3 send-outs. That can be reworded as follows. You want to work that search for 75 candidate conversations or 3 send-outs, whichever comes first. If you get 3 send-outs in the first 10 candidate conversations, then stop. Move on to the next search. But if you get to 75 candidate conversations and you've only come up with 1 candidate, or you've come up with no candidates, move on to the next search. You see, the point here is don't marry the search assignment. Don't spend 2 or 3 weeks working on 1 assignment. The way to make a lot of placements is to rotate your activity. Work many searches. Work at least 10 searches in 1 month, and you will make more placements. Now, let's get back to step number 1. Start talking about it. Make a recruiting plan. Ask yourself, what is the background of the ideal candidate? Education, experience, required, preferred. What industries would he be working in? What companies would he be working in? What departments and what titles? And how do we know the answers to those questions? They are on the job order. They are on the job order. If you've taken a complete job order, it begins to do the work for you right now. It begins to conduct the search. So you answer that questions and then let it lead you to the right category of your own files, which brings us to step number 2. File search, matchups. Pull out the category of files that would contain this candidate, put it on your desk. This is not a taxing exercise. I'm going to fly through this. You put the job order here, you put the resumes over here, and you flip those resumes, looking for resumes that contain the same words as the job order. This is not tough. You're looking for anybody who's right, or anybody who's too light or too heavy, or maybe someone who's not right at all, but they work with somebody who would be right. And you're going to call all of these people and you're going to say, hi, my name is Tony Byrne, I'm a recruiter, here's what I'm looking for, who do you know who can do this job? We're going to ask everybody we talk to, who do you know who can do this job? And I want you to remember that every engineer knows other engineers, every salesman knows other salesmen. The question is not, do you know someone who can do the job? The question is, will you tell me who you know? But let's say that we have exhausted the files and we have not come up with anybody. It is time for us to move on to the next step of the recruiting format, number 3, which is name gathering, digging, fishing, sourcing. This is identifying candidates for your position who are not in your files. Now this is the most controversial aspect of what we do. This is the adventure that's got the most ethical ambiguities. This is the exercise that's given rise to the most legend and horror stories about recruiting. When I interviewed to come into this business 11 years ago, I remember it vividly. I was sitting in this interview, this first interview with this guy I wound up going to work for, just as dignified as I could be. I had on a blue suit and a dark tie. And in the first minute of the interview, he leaned across the desk and he said, does lying bother you? And I said, yeah, why? And he said, well, in this business, you have to lie to make placements. And I said, well, you better tell me about that. And he proceeded to tell me how you tell ruse stories to get names. And he made it sound very humorous and very digestible. And I figured, oh, well, I could probably do that. It's all for a higher purpose anyhow. And I went to work for him. And within a year, I was running his company. And when I would interview people, I would say, does lying bother you? And I would only hire people that lying didn't bother. And then I would teach them how to tell ruse stories. Well, 2 years into my career in this business, it occurred to me, I'm not telling ruse stories. See, I'm uncomfortable telling those stories. I don't like it. And I'm getting lots and lots of names. Why am I training these other folks to tell ruse stories? So I started teaching people to get names the way that I got names. And I'm here to tell you, 10 years later, hundreds of recruiters later, thousands of placements, tens of millions of dollars in fees later, that recruiters who don't tell stories get more names than recruiters who do. And what do you think the secret is, the great mystery? What do you think the great mystery to getting names is? Huh? Asking for honesty. Honesty. Level with them. People know what you are, what you do, who you are, what you do. They know that. They will help you if you ask for their help. I'll tell you what they don't like. People don't like to be lied to. They don't like to be had. They don't like to be tricked. They don't like to be put on. Getting names is easy. Let's start with the level of least difficulty and move to the level of greatest difficulty. You want to talk to a person who has a title. Your job order says, want somebody who is currently a manager of tax accounting. Well, I can't imagine anything easier on this planet than getting through to somebody who has a title. If I call into a company, be it the Ford Motor Company or a four-man CPA firm, and I want to speak to anybody, the president or the dock supervisor, I will get through to them. It's a matter of tone of voice. Just put me through. And if somebody gets in my way, just get out of my way. It's tone of voice, it's confidence. I expect to be put through. I sound like I expect to be put through, and I will be put through almost all the time. Like you, almost all the time. You see, 1 out of 10 times, we are going to wind up on the phone with a secretary who's going to say, sorry, I need a name. You see, secretaries have been given seminars too about recruiters. They've been sent to seminars which in essence tell them that recruiters steal people. Have you ever heard that before? Recruiters steal people? I've heard it a lot. See, it's one of the reasons that recruiters often walk around with a pervasive, undefined sense of guilt, because they've heard that recruiters steal people. Well, I wake up every morning wondering if today's the day I'm finally going to see it happen. If today's the day I'm finally going to see a recruiter put a candidate in a bag and carry him out of a company. I have never seen it happen before. That's not what you do. You don't steal people. You call people up and read opportunities to them. Give them a choice. They can interview or they don't have to interview. You are there to do the best favor that one person can do for another. You're there to upgrade their lives, to improve their careers. When was the last time someone did something that nice for you? Feel great about why you're there. But all right, you're on the phone with this secretary. She says, sorry, I need a name. Don't fight with her. She's just doing her job. Call back in, ask for the mailroom, ask for customer service, ask for sales. Mailroom here. Yeah, I need the manager of tax accounting, please. Sorry, you got the mailroom, buddy. Do you have a directory there? Mailroom always has a directory. You have a directory there? Yeah, we do. Look it up for me. Who do I want to talk to? Be authoritative with the mailroom. Tell them what to do. They will look it up for you, give you the name, and then call back in. Or ask for customer service. Or ask for sales. Sales here. Yeah, I need the manager of tax accounting, please. Sorry, you got sales. Do you have a directory there? Sales always has a directory. Yeah, we have a directory. Would you look it up for me, please? Be nice to sales. Be nice to sales. Would you look it up for me, please? Sales will look it up for you, and while sales is looking it up, they will say, are you a recruiter? See, sales knows about recruiters. Yeah. And what do you say when sales says, are you a recruiter? Yes, I'm a recruiter. Be proud of it. Sales will think that's great. Sales will say, what do you have for me? See, sales always wants to know what a recruiter has for them, all the time. So now you get a name from sales and you call back in. All right, so now let's go to the next level of difficulty. You have a name, and she won't put you through. Does he know who you are? Well, I assume that everyone knows who I am, or ought to. Does he know who you are? Yes. Does he know why you're calling? Yes. Please have him call me back. You see, you recruiters who've been in the business for a long time know that everyone does know who you are, which is why you often have to change your name when you're calling in. Does he know who you are? Yes. Does he know why you're calling? Yes. Then I hang up. Now, I teach recruiting. I have just taught you to leave that message. If I get back to my office on Monday and that message is sitting on my desk from anybody, I'm going to return it, whether I know the person or not, because I think I ought to know the person. Likewise, whoever you leave that message for is going to return the call most of the time. Now, here's another message you can leave. I heard a message last week which is just the best ever. It's good news. It's good news. If a person has 50 messages sitting there and one of them says it's good news, which one is he going to return? Huh? And you are good news. You are good news. All right. Let's move on to the next level of difficulty. You want to talk to someone who shares a title with 20 people in a department. Now, this is tough. This is real tough. And this is where recruiters start telling those nutty stories. And you see that recruiter nervously sitting there for a half an hour beforehand concocting this weird stuff. And then she gets on the phone and she starts telling the secretary, well, you know, I was changing my tire last night and this guy ran over my foot and his wallet fell out the window and I can't read his name, but it looks like he just graduated from college in the last 3 years. You have anybody in your department like that? Would you give me some names? Maybe I'll recognize it. And of course the secretary says, recruiter? And she goes, hangs up and doesn't get any names. Stop telling those nutty stories. You don't need 20 names in a department. How many names do you need? One. That's all. Just one. See, a good recruiter will get one person on the phone, and that person will lead him to two more, and that person will lead him to two more. And pretty soon, you're going to be on the phone with the person who will start ranking the people, telling you who's good and who's not, who's looking and who's not, who you want to talk to and who you don't. And sure, Every now and then, you're going to be on the phone, or you're going to get on the phone with the manager. And the manager's going to say, I don't want you taking my people. And what do? You tell them the same thing that you've been telling everybody else. You just be honest with them. I mean, you see, when you're being honest all the time, you have nothing to hide. You can just level with everybody. That's right. You tell them exactly who you're looking for and then say, by the way, do you have any needs that I can help you with? You either get a job order from the manager or recruit the manager. Just don't waste the call. Now the question becomes, how do you get the one name? Well, I told you this morning, no tricks, no quick fixes, just tactics and strategy. Tactics and strategy. In any department of 20 people, surely there's going to be somebody there before the receptionist gets there in the morning, so call in at 10 to 8. And whoever answers the phone at that company, say, would you please transfer me to the tax accounting department? And when you get through to there, start talking to whoever answers. Start making your presentation. Or call in at lunchtime. Or call in after hours. Or better still, as far as getting that one name is concerned, how about looking to the most obvious resource of all? You guys all specialize. You have thousands of people in your own files from your areas of specialty. Surely there is someone in your files from every department of 20 people that you want to break. Someone in your files, or certainly someone from that company who may not be in the department, or certainly someone in your files who used to work at that company. Call them up and say, hi, this is Tony Byrne. I've worked with you before. This time I need a favor from you. The implication is clear. We've done a favor for you before. We'll do a favor for you again. This time I need a favor from you. Here's what I'm looking for, and I need one name in that department. Person doesn't have to be great. Person doesn't have to be looking. Person just has to be breathing. I just want to get into that department. Now, if that candidate wants you to do a favor for him in the future, he will certainly do a favor for you now. Start at your own files. It's the most obvious resource of all. Okay, so we've got a name now. His name is Charlie Jones. It is time to contact and profile Charlie. Now tell me if this sounds familiar. Hi, Charlie. This is intro. Hi, Charlie. My name is Tony Byrne. I'm a recruiter. I specialize in tax accounting. Charlie, I've got a problem. I want to help you out. Then we go to tell. Charlie, I've got an opening with a client company for a manager of tax accounting. They want someone to do this, this, and this, someone with a background like this, this, and this. Close. Charlie, the money is wide open for the right candidate. Who do you know who can do this job? Ever heard that before? Come on. Sure you have. Of course you have. That's boring. That is really boring. And we wonder why we have to speak to 100 candidates to get 2 or 3 of them to be willing to go out on interviews. That's not going to turn on the candidate that we want to get. You see, most of the candidates that we're going to talk to are busy. They're happy. They're not expecting our call. They're not paying attention while we're giving them these presentations. The only candidate we're going to turn on with that presentation is somebody who's been dying to hear from a recruiter, so that by the time we say, I'm a recruiter, before we even describe the position, he says, yes, I'm your guy. But there are a lot of other candidates that we could get if our presentations were just interesting enough. Here's how you make a presentation. Hi, Charlie. Tony Byrne, recruiter. I specialize in tax accounting. Charlie, I have a problem. I hope you can help me out. Or let's back up. No. Charlie, Tony Byrne, recruiter, specialize in tax accounting. Charlie, I have an opportunity for someone to move up 2 pay grades in 1 year and then go from division to corporate the following year at a company that's in the headlines every week. It's gobbling up its competitors. It's doubled in size in the last 6 months. Now, if we're talking to the guy, to the fast track guy, have we got his attention? Yes, we do. You see, if you're calling up tax accountants describing tax accountant title, duties, and money, you're going to be shooting past a lot of them. I mean, they're just not going to tune in. You're describing tax accountant, title, duties, and money. They might be right for it, but they're just not paying attention. But you call up and start describing opportunity and companies, they're going to pay attention. Now, of course, the slug isn't going to pay attention to that fast-track opportunity. But, of course, then we could call up and say, Charlie, Tony Byrne, recruiter, Charlie, I have an opportunity for someone to sit at the same desk for the next 20 years. Person can die at the desk if they'd like to, at a company you've never heard of before. Never been in the headlines, been making a toy for the last 50 years. See, whatever the opportunity in the company is, we're going to lead with that. That's how you put together a presentation. Then you say, the position is manager of tax accounting. They want someone to do this, this, and this, someone with a background like this, this, and this. Money's wide open for the right candidate, Charlie. Who do you know who can do this job? You lead with the opportunity. See, matching spec to spec, job order spec to candidate spec is the wrong way to make matches. The right way to make matches is to match opportunity to type. That's why you lead with the opportunity. So hopefully you're going to ring a bell with the right type, and then you match spec to spec. So we say, Charlie, who do you know who can do this job? Let's get names from Charlie first. And then, how about you, Charlie? Do you keep your eyes and ears open for a good opportunity? Let me close my door, says Charlie. We are now going to talk to Charlie about Charlie. And when we are profiling a candidate, we are looking for the right combination of 5 variables: education, experience, salary level, geographical location, and willingness to change jobs. Education, experience, salary level, geographical location, and willingness to change jobs. All 5 of them have to be in the right place. 4 of them are in the right place. Not enough. Now, no matter what your profiling form looks like, every profile should contain the following categories of information. Number 1, I'm going to fly through this because it's real basic. Number 1, background professional, in which we want to know current and former employers, titles, duties, dates, and former dollars. Second, we want to know background, educational, degrees, where from, what in, when graduated, GPA. Third, background, personal. Matter of fact, the first question you should ever ask when you get this candidate on the phone is, Charlie, what's your home number in case we get disconnected? Home number, home address, married, single, own, rent. If you are relocating, you need to know about spouse work, how much spouse make, how old are the kids, what part of the country do they come from, have they ever moved before, what's the housing market like in their area. You need a whole other dimension of information. Next, what is your current base salary exclusive of other earnings? What is your current base salary exclusive of other earnings? And what other earnings do you have? And here I do want you to feed them. I want you to feed them a little bit. Do you have overtime? Do you have profit sharing? Do you have bonus? You see, very often, a candidate will say, well, I earn $40,000 a year. You get him a $44,000 offer. And then he says, you know, I forgot to figure in this $6,000 of overtime that I earn every year, and now you have to go back and redo the offer. Well, the time to find out about that is now. And if Charlie is involved in a company-sponsored program, a company-matched salary saving, a 401k, ask him if he's vested. The wrong time to find out that he's not vested for 9 months in his company-matched salary savings is when the offer comes out. Charlie, when is your next review, and how much can it be worth? I can't tell you how much chaos that question causes when it's not asked. And it's such a simple question to ask. If our candidate is earning $40,000 and getting a review in 1 month, we're not going to present him at $40,000. We're going to present him as a candidate who will be earning $44,000 at the time of the offer. It'll make a difference in the amount of the offer. Now, recruiters. Most recruiters stop here. They've got education, experience, salary level, geographical location, and they say, bingo, I've got a good candidate. And they say, would you be interested in interviewing on this position? And the candidate says, yeah, I'd be interested in interviewing. That's the wrong question. That is the wrong question. You see, they've got a candidate who's qualified, who's interested in interviewing. That's why $100,000 billers wind up with a 9-to-1 send-out to placement ratio. It's not because 8 of the 9 are not qualified. It's because of the 8, many of them get to the second interview and drop out. And many of them get offers and don't take them. Why? Because they weren't motivated to change jobs in the first place. We know nothing about the 5th variable, which is willingness to change jobs, motivation to change jobs. So let's ask, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being most anxious to change positions, how anxious are you? On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being most anxious to change positions, how anxious are you? And recruiters, what number do we want to work with? Ones, and ones only. By definition, someone who accepts a position is a 1. Ones take offers, 2s take counteroffers. You know, I've heard every reason in the book why I'm going to work with this 2, or why this 3 is going to change his mind. I have a very persuasive employer. No! You want a low send-out to placement ratio, you work with 1s, people who are 1s right out of the gate. You see, the mistake that recruiters make is they find somebody who's got a great background who's a 2, and they say, well, I bet I'll be able to turn him around. And they spend 6 weeks going to the altar with a 2 just to have him turn it down, instead of spending 1 more day finding someone with the same background who's a 1. You make placements by working with 1s. Now, the answer has 2 parts, not just the number. It's the number and an explanation. Because, you see, we want to make sure that the person has good reasons for wanting to make a change. The fact that a person says they want to change isn't enough. It has to be a 1 for good reasons. So the person says, I'm a 1. We say, why? Well, they're closing my facility down next week. Great answer. I'm a 1. Why? Well, they want to move my department to Idaho, and my family's here, and I don't want to go. Good answer. I'm a 1. Why? Well, the person sitting next to me just got a promotion I've been waiting for 3 years, and if I want to move up, I've got to move out. Good answer. I'm a 3, but I'm a 1 for the right opportunity. That's a great answer. We're selling opportunity. Person's content, but they'd move for a better opportunity. Great. I'm a 3, but I'm a 1 for the right money. Is that a good answer? Lousy answer. See, that person is telling us right now that he will take a counteroffer, and you must assume that all candidates are going to get counteroffers. See? Bad answer. I'm a 2. Why? Well, I really like it here. It's a shame that they're closing this place down next week, and they want to move us all to Idaho, and I really don't want to go. My family's here. Sounds like a 1 to me, but I'm going to keep talking to this person until he says he's a 1. I'm not going to impute 1. I'm going to get him to say 1. And remember, the person hasn't been sitting around all morning saying, what am I, a 1, 2, 3, 4, or a 5? You know, it may take him a couple of minutes to rank himself. So that when you say, what are you on a scale of 1 to 5, if that person comes leaping out of the phone and says, I'm a 1, I might be a little nervous about that, you know? And we say, why? And he says, well, because I love to interview. I interview at least 1 place every week. Where am I interviewing this week? That's not somebody I want to work with. No, that's a promiscuous 1. I don't want to work with that person. I want to tell you another saying, which you should learn. $100,000 billers spend a lot of time trying to turn 2s into 1s. $500,000 billers spend a lot of time trying to turn 1s into 2s. Why would you go out on this interview? No, you got a great job. You're working for a terrific company. You're getting paid a lot of money. You don't want to go out on this interview, do you? Selling against, challenging, testing. Why do you think? Why do you think? Are they trying to blow their candidates away? Yes. Yes, they are. Why? They can't turn a 1 into a 2. All they can do is discover a 2 lurking underneath their 1. A 2 in 1's clothing. See, they don't want to be working with a 2. No, keep challenging, keep testing. Negative selling, negative selling. We want to work with ones and ones only. So now, if the person is a 1, we have found out about education, experience, salary, geographical location, and willingness to change jobs. If all 5 of them are not in the right place, we are going to say, look, send me your resume. I'll keep you in mind for future openings. Once again, who do you know who can do this job? But let's say all 5 of them are in the right place. Bingo. We're going to move forward. Okay, now when you are recruiting, Charlie, look for knockout factors. Is there anything that could prevent you from accepting an offer right now? Anything personal? Anything medical? Are you interviewing anywhere else? Are you expecting any promotions at your own company? Some big billers, not all, some big billers routinely make candidates that they are going to send out on interviews go to their own employers first and ask, what are your plans for me? Am I going to get a promotion? Am I going to get a raise? What does the future look like for me right now? You see, because if you can get the candidate to find out that there are things that would keep him at this company, better you find out now than when the candidate gets the offer. Now, I'm not going to recommend that for everybody. It takes some sophistication to do that, and it adds a step to the process, which I don't want new guys to be involved in. Knockout factors. Bottom line. What is the minimum amount of money that you would accept to change positions? The minimum. Now, if our $40,000 candidate says, well, the minimum amount of money that I would accept to change positions is $55,000, what are we going to tell them? You're unreasonable. That's right, it is unreasonable. The reasonable range of expectation for a candidate changing positions is 5% to 15%. That's the reasonable range of expectation. And in all cases, we're going to try and close our candidate at 5% and close our company at 15% and keep a spread between the two. Now, of course, when we say what's the minimum amount of money that you would accept to change positions, we want to hear something around 10%. So our $40,000 candidate says, well, the minimum that I would take is $44,000. That's reasonable. We're now going to look and see if there's any play in that. Well, would you accept 40? Would you take a lateral for a perfect opportunity? No, I wouldn't take a lateral. Would you take 42 for the ideal opportunity? No, I wouldn't take 42. The minimum, the rock bottom that I would take is 43. Okay, make a note of that. We've moved them down $1,000, minimum but shaky minimum. Charlie, you've got a good background. You've got good reasons for wanting to make a change. You have answered all my questions correctly. I'm going to present you to my client company. Now, with all due respect, one tax accountant has the same title, duties, and money as another tax accountant. I don't want to present you as a tax accountant. I want to present you as a person who could do something for this company, a person who is special. And right now, Charlie, I know nothing about you as a person. So let's talk. Now, I want you to talk to Charlie about Charlie. I want you to find out 3 categories of information. Personal, what makes him tick? What are his interests? Find out about the person. What could he do for the employer? You want to find out what the benefit would be. Why should they hire him instead of all the other tax accountants with the same title, duties, and money? What could he do for them? And then what's special about him? Achievements and accomplishments. We're going to use those 3 categories of information to sell Charlie back to the company. Remember, when we presented the job order to Charlie, we didn't present title, duties, and money. We presented opportunity at company. Well, likewise, when we present Charlie to the company, we're not going to present title, duties, and money. We're going to present benefit and achievement accomplishment. And beware, recruiters, because candidates are not comfortable selling themselves. You may have to ask the same question several times. You will have to bring them out a little bit. Put them at ease. But I want you to get that information. You are not in a position to sell that candidate until you have that information. All right, Charlie, good. I am going to present you to my company right now. Give me some interviewing times. When's it convenient for you to interview? Now, before we get off the phone, here's the last thing we say to Charlie. Charlie, by the way, let's role play for a minute. I present you to this company, you go out on 3 interviews, and they make you a $44,000 offer. You accept, go back to your company to resign, and they make you a $44,000 counteroffer. Are you going to take it? Ask him right now. See, he hasn't had time to contrive an answer. It's the very first conversation. He'll give you a candid, unrehearsed answer. Charlie, they make you a counteroffer of $44,000. Are you going to take it? What is the range of acceptable responses to that question? No, no, that's right. No, I'm not going to take it. We are cross-qualifying right here. See, Charlie, they make you a counteroffer of $44,000. Are you going to take it? If Charlie says, well, I'd have to think about it, is he a 1? No. And if Charlie says, if Charlie is a 1, what's he going to say? No. He's going to say no. We are cross-qualifying. We were also cross-qualifying with dollars when we asked what's the minimum you take. You see, a 1 is going to give us a reasonable number, and somebody who gives us an unreasonable number is not a 1. Okay, now when you are recruiting, Charlie, what if he asks, who's the company? Sorry, I can't tell you that on this call, Charlie. I'm going to present you to my client company, and if they want to see you, I will get back to you and let you know who they are. Don't give up the name of your client company on the first call. That's your asset. Protect it. You have no idea how much competition you create for yourselves when you give up the name of your client company. You talk to Charlie. You tell him your client company is Ampex. Charlie tells the guy sitting next to him, guess what? Ampex is looking for a guy just like me. This guy calls his favorite recruiter and says, guess what? Ampex is looking for a guy just like Charlie. This recruiter calls this guy, places him, and you never know what happened to you. Don't give up the name of your client company. Think of how many leads you've gotten, how many placements you've made because some candidate opened up and told you who the company was. Protect the name of that client company. What to say if Charlie says, is that Ampex? And it is. Well, you could lie and say no. You could tell the truth and give up your asset, but you don't want to do either of those things. Is that Ampex? Why, Charlie? Is Ampex looking? Answer a question with a question. Have you interviewed at Ampex? Last thing we want to do if Charlie's interviewed at Ampex is present him there, because all we're going to do is make him look good, and we're not going to get the fee. Charlie says, where did you get my name? Well, if you dug him up, if you were referred to Charlie, I was referred to you. If you can name the source, name the source. If you just dug him up, tell him, look, identifying good people is what I do for a living. And if you want to really lay it on, say, frankly, Charlie, someone as good as you are isn't hard to find. But save that for special occasions. Charlie says, specifically, how much is the company willing to pay? Well, Charlie, the salary is open, depending upon your experience and current earnings. But now, you profile Charlie, and you find out that he's earning 49, and you know the ceiling on this position is 50. He's earning 49, ceiling's 50. Do you let him continue to believe the salary's open? No, sir, absolutely not, because he can legitimately expect an increase to 53, 54. You have to now tell him, Charlie, when I got on the phone with you, I didn't realize how much you were earning. The fact is, ceiling on this position is 50. Now, you should still interview because, and let's sell the merits of the position. Meanwhile, we're going to go back to the company and say, look, we found your guy. Here's his background, but he's earning 49. Come up with 53 or 54. If we can get Charlie to interview based on the merits of the position with an expectation of 50, and then get the company to come up with 53 or 54, we've got a formula for a hire taking place. What to do if the candidate is too light or too heavy for the position? Say, look, you're too light, you're too heavy, here's why. I'll keep you in mind for future openings. Now, send me a resume, and once again, who do you know who can do this job? And when you ask that question, who do you know who can do this job, don't leave it there. Always plant suggestions. Who do you know who can do this job? Someone you left behind at your last company. Someone who's driving too far to work. Someone whose project is ending. Always plant at least 2 suggestions. You get more names. So Charlie says, yeah, you're right. I know someone. And you say, great, Charlie, what's his name? And he says, I want to call him, and I'll have him call you. Has that ever happened to you? How often do you get that call back? Never. Let's average the room here. Never. Yeah, never. So no, do we want the name? Do we want that name? We've described the position to Charlie. He knows somebody. Do we want that name? You bet. And we know he's not going to call us back, so let's go for it. Let's go for it right now. Charlie, we say to Charlie, who do you know can do this job? He says, yeah, I know somebody. Who is it, Charlie? No, I want to contact him myself. Charlie, he may not want you to know he's looking. He'll tell me, but he won't tell you. Now, what's his name? No, I want to contact him myself. Charlie, with all due respect, I can answer questions about the position that you can't, which might influence whether or not he's interested. What's his name? No, I really want to contact him myself. Charlie, look, do the guy a favor. You're probably going to be improving his career. I'll keep your name out of it, and I'll mention it later on if you'd like. What's his name? You got to keep asking what's his name, but you can't ask beyond this. If Charlie now says no, you got to say, okay, Charlie, you call him. I'll call you back in an hour, and get off the phone before he tells you not to. Just get right off the phone and call Charlie back in an hour. Have you spoken to him yet? And I promise you, I guarantee you Charlie hasn't. He has not made the call yet. Hang up, call Charlie back in another hour. Every hour, be there like a cuckoo clock. Be there like pain until Charlie gives up that name. Is he going to get annoyed? Yeah. Do we care? No. Normally we would, but not in this case. Not in this case. Charlie is standing in between this guy and an opportunity, and that's not right of Charlie to do that. So we want to just keep going after Charlie till we get that name. What to do if the candidate is nervous about disclosing his background to you, or the fact that he wants to change jobs to you? You're a stranger, and you're asking some very sensitive stuff. Charlie, relax. Confidentiality is my stock in trade. I will do nothing to jeopardize your current employment. And recruiters, please do nothing to jeopardize the current employment of your candidates. Nothing gives our industry a bigger black eye than the story of a recruiter who carelessly sends a resume to a different division of the same parent company, or the story of a recruiter who carelessly checks a reference with the current employer. Do nothing to jeopardize the current employment of your candidates. All right. Now, it takes about half an hour to profile a candidate sufficiently so that you have enough information that you can answer any reasonable question about his background. And you want to have that much information before you pick up the telephone to call the employer. And you do want to pick up the telephone to call the employer as soon as you get off the phone with Charlie. This business, a placement, has 3 keys. The 3 keys are the 30 steps in the placement process, the characteristics of a good job order, and the characteristics of a good candidate. Those are the rails that a placement runs on. You see, if you're lining yourself up on those 3 keys, 30 steps, characteristics, good job order, characteristics, good candidate, the only placements you'll ever lose will be to competition, not to mistakes. Most recruiters lose most of their placements to their own mistakes. And we've already done 2 of the keys this morning, 30 steps and the characteristics of a good job order. Now we are going to do the 3rd key, which is the characteristics of a good candidate. What are the characteristics of a good candidate? Give me one.
The first thing, the candidate must be able to do the job.
Can do the job. That's right. And you notice we're not saying meets the specs, because very often the specs are written in an ivory tower and aren't exactly what the company wants. Can do the job. Give me another one.
Reasons for other than money.
Changing for reasons other than money. Money is a bad motivation. It may be a good motivation for the candidate, but it's not a good motivation for us. Another one.
They have to be realistic about the money and the specifications.
So if we're talking to a $40,000 candidate who wants $60,000, we're not going to work with them. We want our $40,000 candidate to be willing to move for about 10% or less. Another one.
You have to be cooperative, willing to work our way.
Somebody who's going to go on interviews if they're scheduled, take our calls, give us feedback, and take an offer if one is made. That's right, a cooperative candidate, another characteristic of a good candidate.
He's reference checkable.
Reference checkable. Now, they don't have to be great references. Later on today, we're going to discuss references. They just have to exist and validate his ability to do this job. Another characteristic, good candidate.
Appearance.
Appearance. Now, you know what? Appearance is not a universal characteristic of a good candidate. It is for secretaries. It is for salesmen. It is for people who are in appearance positions. But I owned a firm that placed thousands of people in the electronics industry, and it was a good thing that my recruiters didn't meet most of them until after they went to work. Another characteristic of a good candidate.
The right chemistry.
Chemistry. Chemistry means how do they get along, and you know that chemistry component is as important as whether or not he can do the job. Given 5 people of equal ability, they're going to hire the one they like. Characteristic.
It has to be in the right geographical location or be willing to relocate.
You bet. So the candidate doesn't live too far from the job, or at least is willing to relocate if he lives in another state. Characteristic of a good candidate.
Not too long at the same company.
Not too long. And I'm going to tell you in a few minutes what too long is, but it's very important that our candidate have a pattern of movement. That's correct. And characteristic, final characteristic of a good candidate.
They have something to sell to the new prospective employer.
Something to sell besides title, duties, and money. We don't want to call up our employer and read a resume to him. We want to sell something. And what are we going to sell? We're going to sell the person. We're going to sell the benefit. We are going to sell the achievement and the accomplishment. Very important. Those are the characteristics of a good candidate. Before you start to work with a candidate, use this like a checklist. Does he have these? If he doesn't, don't work with him. Find somebody else. Does that require discipline? You bet. You bet it does. But it requires discipline, a lot of discipline, to be a good recruiter. But the rewards make it worthwhile. Now, let's move forward. I want you now to become students of candidate behavior. The behavior of the candidate who is going to take your job is at all times positive, enthusiastic, eager. I want it. I want it. Get me that next interview. Get me the offer. They want to move forward with it. Now, that behavior can change. It can change from enthusiastic to less enthusiastic, from eager to reluctant. It can change at any point throughout the process. It can change before or after the first interview. It can change before or after the second interview. It can change at the time of the offer. It can even change after the offer has been extended or accepted. Anytime the candidate's behavior changes, it means something. Now, most recruiters deal with changes in behavior in one of 2 ways. Either they ignore it, hoping that it will go away, or they start arm twisting. Oh, come on, you want to be interested, don't you? Don't you? You should be interested. Here's why. Twisting, twisting, twisting. That's not the right way to do it. Anytime you see a change in behavior, confront it. Find out what it means. And the change of the behavior that we're going to be recognizing, the behavior that we're going to be looking for, is number 1 behavior. And we're going to be looking at any change in behavior as a change from number 1 behavior. In other words, we're going to keep testing to see whether or not we are still dealing with a number 1. Now, that behavior can change as early as the first telephone call. You are 20 or 25 minutes into this conversation because the candidate said, I'm a number 1. And he gave you good reasons for being a number 1. And he was enthusiastic and he was eager. And he closed himself at a low number. Yeah, I'll take 43. Confirming status as number 1. Now, 25 minutes into the conversation, he starts saying things like, and this is after he's agreed to go out on the interview, starts saying things like, yeah, sounds like that company really needs me. I'd be interested in going out there if they gave me a corner office, Friday afternoons off, company boat. Starts dictating terms. Has that ever happened to you before? Sure. Sure. Is that the behavior of a number 1? Absolutely not. No, it's not. And how would most recruiters deal with that change of behavior, having gotten him to agree to go out on the interview already? Most recruiters would say, well, we can talk about that later. Why don't you go out on that interview? Isn't that true? Why don't you just get out there? And he'd hope that it would go away, or he'd hope that the company would handle it. That is not the way to deal with that. The right way to deal with that change in behavior would be to say, look, you don't sound as enthusiastic as you did 20 minutes ago. Here you are dictating terms and you haven't even been on an interview yet. I'll tell you what, you go home and think about this, and if you decide you want to proceed, you call me tomorrow morning and convince me to send you out there, because right now I am not convinced. Challenge him. Take it away. As hard as you can, take it away. You're going to find that you can't take an opportunity away from someone who really wants it. Now, I want to tell you about a law of candidate nature. The higher a candidate's demands, the lower his level of interest. The higher his level of interest, the lower his demands. It's a fulcrum. It's a fulcrum. It's called the interest demand barometer. It is an infallible gauge of how that candidate is feeling. We close the candidate at 43. Here's interest demand. Candidate now starts making demands. Let's say he comes out of the first interview, starts saying, I want 48. What's he telling us? Less interested. Demands go up, interest goes down. Candidate comes out of the first interview telling us, you know what, I take it for 40. What's he telling us? Lower demands, higher interest. Same thing on the first telephone call. Candidate closes himself at 43, starts making demands, want a corner office, company boat, Friday afternoon's off. Boy, there goes that barometer like this. He's saying that he's not as interested as he was when we closed him at 43. Watch that interest demand barometer. Now, before we leave the subject of recruiting, I want to discuss the mistakes most often made by recruiters about candidates. And if you could just erase these mistakes from your repertoire, you would make more placements. Mistake, often made by recruiters, is being blinded by paper qualifications. You read a resume and you say, oh boy, this guy is great. And then you get him on the phone, and your brain and your gut says, wait a minute, this isn't the same guy that I was reading about. You know what? Believe your instincts. You talk to these guys all day long. If your instincts tell you this candidate isn't everything the resume says he is, I believe your instincts. Don't be blinded by paper qualifications. Mistake, often made by recruiters, adopting a candidate as a personal crusade. Have you ever done that before? Sure you have. You know why? Because recruiters have big hearts. And a candidate comes up to our office and tells us a story, and we say, I'm going to find that candidate a job if it kills me. And it usually does. And you send him out 4 or 5 times, 9 or 10 times, and he keeps coming in second or third. If he keeps coming in second or third, the marketplace is telling you something. If you want to take him home and feed him and take care of him, that's great, but don't spend all your time working with him. You're here to make placements. Mistake, often made by recruiters, is presenting candidates who live too far from the company. Here's how this one works. You've been working on this search for 3 days. You've spoken to 70 people, and you haven't come up with anybody. You are frustrated. And now you're on the phone with somebody whose background is perfect. They've got the right education, experience, salary level. They're a number 1, but they live 80 miles from the job. And you say, but you live 80 miles from the job. And the candidate says, oh, don't worry. I'll relocate. You know, ignore the fact that my wife works. We've lived there for 15 years. I will relocate. Or heck, I'll get an apartment there during the week. Or if I have to, I'll commute for a year. You want to believe it. You want to believe it because you haven't come up with anybody. He believes it. He's a number 1. He likes what he's hearing from you about the position. He believes it. You present him to the company. Company loves him. And they say, but you live 80 miles from us. He says, don't worry. Recruiter and I have that all worked out. They're going to make him an offer. Sure they are. And he's going to go home and say, okay, honey, let's move. All right, I'll tell you what. I'll get an apartment there during the week. Sure you will. And now he's going to start to commute. And of course, he interviewed at 11 and he interviewed at 2 in the afternoon. Now he starts making the drive at 6 in the morning and at 6 at night. He's going to do that for 2 or 3 days and turn the job down. Happens all the time. 1 out of 20 times it goes together. But you don't get a 3-to-1 send-out to placement ratio by working with candidates who take jobs 1 out of 20 times. And you know what? Presenting them isn't the mistake. If you had the discipline to back them up, presenting them would be all right. It's not backing them up. That's the real mistake. You see, if you could send him in, know that he's a low percentage guy, turn your back on him and find more people, then it would be fine to present him. But because we don't have the discipline to back him up, don't even present him. Which brings me to the biggest mistake made nationwide by recruiters. Almost all recruiters make this mistake, except for the ones who make a lot of placements, of course. And you know what this mistake is? It is stopping the search after you've found one candidate that the company says they like. That is the single biggest mistake that recruiters make nationwide. And the company's just as guilty as the recruiter is. The company sees one person that you send in and they say, yeah, great, we like this person. Don't show us any more people. Let us go the distance with this one. And the recruiter says, all right. And then if you ask that recruiter, do you have backups? Yeah, that recruiter has backups. And if you explore what he means, backups are people sitting on his desk waiting to be presented for the first interview if this one falls apart at the third interview. That's not backups. Backups are people who are all interviewing at the same time for the first and for the second and for the third. Backups are people who are ready to get and take the offer if this candidate doesn't get and take the offer. You know, it's a shame that recruiters stop looking when they get one candidate in there because most of the work is spent finding the first candidate. Most of it. And if you could just work on it for a few more hours, you come up with a few more candidates because now you're into the right departments and you got the right referral sources. Don't stop presenting people. If the company says we don't want to see more people because we like this guy, tell the company, look, you got to see more people. Most of early #1 favorites don't get or take offers. More don't than do. Explain that to the employer. Tell them, look, instead of having to start this process over again, if this guy decides not to take an offer or if you decide not to make him one, let's have people ready to get and take the offer. How many more placements would you have made last year if every time you have the #1 candidate, you also had the #2 candidate? It's a bunch, isn't it? A whole bunch. Back up, back up. Mistake, often made by recruiters, is presenting candidates who've been at one company for too long. Boy, if I could teach you one thing that's going to put money in your pockets during your careers as recruiters, one simple thing is this. Do not work with candidates who've been at one company for longer than 7 years. Sounds kind of arbitrary, doesn't it? Procter & Gamble did a study 25 years ago about the psychology of tenure. And they discovered that after 7 years, the likelihood of a person leaving a company of his own free will diminishes to almost 0. And they used the findings from that study to adjust their wage increase and promotion policies, to the point where now at Procter & Gamble, as well as many other large companies, there are 2 classes of people. People who've been there forever, people who've been there for a few years. Which class of people is getting the wage increases and the promotions? People who've been there for a few years. Why? Company needs to do that to keep them. They don't need to give them to the people who've been there forever to keep them. Gravity keeps those people there. Inertia keeps them. Fear of change keeps them. Matter of fact, you know what? Procter & Gamble has a name, a corporate generic term for those people. They're called gray men. Xerox just picked up the same term. That's the term they used to describe them in their memos. Now, final mistake made by recruiters about candidates is forcing situations. When the candidate's telling you right up front, I'm happy. I've turned down 2 offers in the last year. I'm expecting a promotion. But I'm in a slump. I have gone 6 weeks without making a placement. I have had 30 send-outs without making a placement. And now I'm on the phone with somebody whose background is perfect. She's got the right education, experience, salary level, geographical location. If I asked, scale of 1 to 5, she'd tell me she's a 3 or a 4. 3 or a 4. But I'm not asking. I don't want to know. I mean, through the sheer power of my will, I'm going to get this person to go out on the interview and to take the job. I don't want to know whether she wants it or not. So I do that. I persuade her to go out on that interview. She goes out and she goes back and starts saying things like, yeah, nice company, nice people. I'm winning now. So I get her out there for the offering interview. They're going to make her an offer. She's perfect. And she's going to turn it down on the spot. She told me she was going to turn it down first time I talked to her, but I wasn't listening. Don't work with people that you have to drag kicking and screaming through the process. If we're doing our jobs right, we're just clearing the way for candidates and companies to come together who want to be together. We have now recruited a candidate. We've taken a job order, recruited a candidate who is qualified and interested. Now all we have to do is present him to the employer and make a placement. We have taken a job order. We have come up with a candidate. Now all we have to do is present that candidate to the employer and make a placement. When do you present a candidate? When you have one who is qualified and interested. Qualified and interested. The mistake that most recruiters make about candidates is they present candidates who are qualified, who are willing to interview. That's the wrong time to present it. It's got to be qualified and motivated to change positions. Now, before you present the candidate to the employer, write out your presentation. It doesn't have to be scripted. Matter of fact, I don't want you to read a presentation to the employer. But write out that presentation so that you can pace yourself towards the close. And the close on this presentation is going to be setting an interview. Now, tell me if this sounds familiar. Don't write this down. Tell me if this sounds familiar. Hi, John. It's Tony Byrne. I have your manager of tax accounting. Johnny is currently at Transamerica as a senior tax accountant doing this, this, and this. Prior to that, he was at Prudential Bache as a junior tax accountant doing this, this, and this. He's got a BS in Business Administration from NYU. He's currently earning 40. I think we can get him for 43. I can have him out at your office tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock. Is that a good time? Or would 3 o'clock be better for you? Huh? Does that sound familiar? Sure it does. Sure it does. That's how many of us were trained to make presentations. That's how I trained recruiters for 10 years to make presentations. That is boring. That is boring. Let's think about this for a second. John has an opening for a manager of tax accounting, right? He has, well, the word is out. He's run an ad. He's gotten 100 resumes from that ad of tax accountants. Same title, duties, and money, and he's read them all. They're different colors, different typefaces, but they're all the same. He's gotten 50 resumes from his own employees, all trying to get the internal referral bonus, and he's read them all. He's got 20 resumes from other recruiters, tax accountants, and he's read them all. He's read 170 resumes of tax accountants. Every time he hears the term tax accountant, his eyes glaze over. And now we call him up and say, hey, John, I have your tax accountant. All we do is launch him into a state of boredom and catatonia. He's not going to be paying attention to us. Come on, that's not the way to make presentations. Here's how you make a presentation. Hi, John. Tony Byrne. I would like to introduce you to someone who is currently a senior tax accountant for one of your competitors. In other words, Intro, identify the candidate by title and employer. You can characterize the employer. You don't have to name the employer. And then immediately get into the benefit. What could this candidate do for John? John, this is a guy who could add $1 million to your bottom line by bringing you up on the new IBM system. He could automate the entire tax accounting function, bring you up, save you $1 million. Into the benefit within 10 seconds. Now, achievement accomplishment. He consolidated 6 tax accounting locations into 2 and cut his operating budget by 50% at his last employer. Achievement accomplishment. Reason for changing. His current employer wants to move the tax accounting function to Idaho. His family's here. He doesn't want to go. Intro, identify candidate, benefit, achievement accomplishment, reason for changing. That is 60% of the presentation, right there. 60% of the presentation. And we haven't gotten near his resume yet. Most recruiters call up companies and read resumes to them. We didn't do that. Now, after benefit, achievement, accomplishment, reason for changing, we're going to summarize his background. He's got 11 years of tax accounting experience at 2 companies specializing in entertainment insurance. We take his entire career and summarize it in one sentence. He's got a BS in Business Administration from NYU. He's currently earning 40, and I'm going to make a mistake here. I think we can get him for 45. I am sure we can get him for 46. I'm making a mistake on purpose. It'll come back to haunt us later. It's 46 we want. We want to be closing this company at 46. I think we can get him for 45. I am sure we can get him for 46. Now create some excitement. I am introducing him to you and 4 of your competitors only. They are seeing him over the next 2 days. I can have him in your office tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. It's a good time for him. Is it a good time for you? I have had employers say to me, look, please tell him just to ask for one time. Please tell him to stop saying, or would 3 o'clock be better for you? We have heard it 9 million times. Please tell him to just ask for one time. Start asking for one time. Create some excitement, create some urgency, make the employer feel like you're doing him a favor to get that candidate in there at all. Now this presentation should take a minute or less from hello to close. And I want to give you a hint. The clearer the benefit, the shorter the presentation can be. If you're going to introduce someone to an employer who can bring him $1 million, all you have to do is ask that employer, would you like to meet someone who can bring you $1 million? And the employer will say yes. You don't have to get into a lot of description about his background. The less clear the benefit is, the more you're going to have to support it with other information, with achievement, accomplishment, with a little bit of background. But if you've done this presentation correctly, intro, identify candidate, benefit, achievement, accomplishment, reason for changing, summarize background, education, money, create excitement, close. If you've done it properly, you've piqued the employer's interest, and then you've told him nothing about the candidate, just summarize his background, and he's going to say to you, tell me more about him. Because you haven't really told him. He's interested now in hearing, but you haven't told him anything about him. Tell me more about him. Well, John, what do you want to know? Well, where does he work now? See, now you're having a conversation with John. He's asking you questions. John, he works at Transamerica as a senior tax accountant doing this, this, and this. I can have him there at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. That's the only time he has open. Is it a good time for you? Answer the question, close. And if John has enough poise to ignore the second close and comes back at you, well, with where did he work prior to that? Well, John, prior to that, he worked at Prudential Beige as a junior tax accountant doing this, this, and this. Do you have your calendar in front of you? Just keep closing. Keep closing. Now let's quickly dispense with the question that has tripped up recruiters for time immemorial. What might the employer say at some point along here? Send me a resume. Send me a resume. What else do you want to know? See, why does he say send me a resume? No. He says it out of habit. Out of habit. He doesn't think that he needs a resume. He says it because he's always been saying it. He says it because his boss says it. He says it because the guy sitting next to him says it. Not because he needs it. What does he need in order to decide whether or not to see this candidate? Information. That's exactly right. Information is what he needs. So when he says, send me a resume, do him a favor. Ignore it and offer him what he needs. Send me a resume. What else do you want to know? Well, where did he go to school? Went to NYU, graduated in 1978. Do you have your book in front of you? Can you see him tomorrow at 9 o'clock? Answer the question and close. Now, I want to say something truly radical. I'm not opposed to you sending resumes. I would prefer that you didn't. I prefer that you didn't. And I train recruiters not to do it, but I'm not opposed to you sending resumes. I can think of some circumstances where some recruiters would have to do it. If they're going to be logged in as the agency of record, if they're dealing 3 levels down from the level where a decision's taking place, I can think of lots of circumstances where you need to send resumes. Go ahead, send them a resume. Have the candidate bring it over. You drive it over, walk it over, FedEx it, Quip it. I can think of 20 ways for you to get that resume to the employer. But don't get off of this conversation without setting up the interview. I don't care about the resume, but don't get off of this conversation. You see, you'll never be in a better position than you are right this second to set up the interview. And if that employer says to you, I can't set up that interview until I have a resume, say, gee, you know, I can't give you the resume until I have the interview set up. So I'll tell you what. Why don't we split the difference? Just give me a time and I'll have the candidate bring it with him. Just don't get off of this conversation until you have got the interview set up. Now, when you are finding people to fill a position, don't save up 5 of them and present all 5 to the company at the same time. Don't do that. Present the candidates as you find them, one at a time. So if you find one this morning, present them. Find one this afternoon, present them. You see, when recruiters were doing read the resume presentations, yeah, maybe an employer could live through 3 or 4 resumes being read to him. But I don't know any employer who could live through 2 of these presentations. It's called a benefit presentation, a power presentation. You are involving them. You're bringing them up. You're bringing them down. You're getting them to think. You're involving them in a conversation. You're closing them. When he gets off of that conversation, he's saying, whew, what a guy. You can't start all over again. You can't even do 2 of those in a row in the same conversation. Do them one at a time. Also, presenting candidates one at a time will give you multiple opportunities to talk to the employer. It'll tell the employer that you're working on the job full-time, and he likes that, and it will help you develop a rapport. You have presented the candidate to the employer. The employer likes what he hears. It is now time to set up the first interview. Well, John said, get him in tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock. I'm now going to call up Charlie and prep him for the first interview. This is where most recruiters start to lose control of the process. You see, that first interview is going to be out from under your control. And most people who go into interview just want to get through it. They want to get out in one piece. And recruiters don't help them to do any better. I want our candidate to go in and what? Win. That's right. And the way to prepare him to win is to be able to give him as much information as possible ahead of time. We don't want him in there freezing up. We don't want him in there worrying about how he's doing. We want him walking in there with confidence, knowing he's going to do well. Remember, interviewing is sweaty palm time for most adults. Adults interview 15 or 20 times in their whole lives. Well, we're going to help him to go in and win. The first thing we're going to tell Charlie when we have him on the phone to prep him is, Charlie, let's clear away all the smoke. When you go in there tomorrow, you have 2 objectives and 2 objectives only. Number 1, find out if the job and the company are a good fit for you. Are the job and the company a good fit? And objective number 2, set up the next interview. If the next step were a test, we'd say schedule a test. If the next step were an offer, we would say get the offer. Whatever the next step is, the next action step, schedule it. Now, we are going to describe in detail the company, the position, and the interviewing process to Charlie. Company. You ever notice the difference between the way a recruiter describes a company before he's been out there and after he's been out there? Before he's been out there, he says this is a company with 4 locations, 7,000 employees, they make $9 million a year, and they make egg cartons. And then after he's been out there, he starts talking about these people and what they're like, and the machinery, and how they make their product, and the plans for the future. It's a whole different presentation. Well, that's the kind of presentation that I want you to make to Charlie. An enthusiastic, an emotional presentation, not egg cartons, number of facilities, annual sales. That he can read in a manufacturer's directory. We're going to describe the interviewing process. Charlie, when you get out there tomorrow, you're going to pull up to a 2-story brick building. It's about 3 acres in size. You're going to walk into a wood-paneled waiting room with drawings of horses on the wall. First person you're going to talk to is Edna. She's the receptionist. Nice lady. She's been there for about 20 years. Describe Edna to Charlie. Edna's going to give you some paperwork. Here's what the paperwork is. You're going to have to fill it out. First guy you're going to meet with is Dave. Dave is the group manager. Dave is going to talk to you about your career to date. Dave is a real high-energy guy. His tie is always open. Now, when you interview with Dave, he likes you to do most of the talking. Here are the kinds of questions he asks. Here are the kinds of answers that he likes to hear. Next, you're going to meet with Andrew. Now, Andrew has been with the company for 14 years. He's the district manager. He's going to talk to you about the job that you would be doing at this company. Andrew likes to do most of the talking in his interviews. Here are the kinds of questions he asks. Here are the kinds of answers that he likes to hear. Now, finally, you're going to meet with Walter. Walter's one of the founders. He's about 60 years old. He's a lovely guy, but a very conservative guy. He conducts an unstructured interview. He's going to try and draw you out. Frankly, he's looking for someone who would like to build a career at this company. Here are the kinds of questions he asks. Here are the kinds of answers he likes to hear. Now, how do we know all of that? Huh? It's on the job order. It is all on the job order. Everything I just said is an answer to a question that we asked before. What is the interviewing process? How many? With whom? Over what period of time? How long does each one last? What's the agenda for each interview? Tell me about the interviewers. What kinds of guys are they? How long have they been at the company? When they interview, what kinds of questions do they ask? What kinds of answers do they like to hear? Now, you know how many interviews, many recruiters prep candidates for interviews? Well, you know how they do it? They say, Charlie, your interview is at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. I know you're going to knock them dead. Give me a buzz as soon as you leave. Now, who's going to win? Who's going to win? Our guy or this guy who's been told knock him dead? See, our guy can go to bed tonight thinking about who he's going to meet with, how he's going to make his points, thinking about all of that. So when he goes in there tomorrow, he's rehearsed it. This other guy, tomorrow's April Fool's Day. Everybody's going to see, everybody's going to meet with, everything they're going to talk about is going to be one surprise after another. You bet. Make sure that you prepare your candidate to go in and win. Now, Charlie, if the subject of money comes up in that interview, if they ask you how much is it going to take to get you over here, I want you to tell them, look guys, I'm here for the challenge and the opportunity. I'm sure you'll make me a fair offer. Charlie, do not name a number. I will negotiate the best possible offer for you. I'm not going to promise you what it might be because I don't know, but it will be the best possible offer. Recruiters, do not let Charlie name a number. If they get Charlie to name a number in that first interview, you become a bystander at that moment in the process. You lose your negotiating leverage. And I'll tell you what else happens. Charlie goes into that interview. You've hammered him down to 43. He goes into that interview and they say, Charlie, what's the minimum amount that you take, or what's it going to take to get you over here? Well, a candidate, in an effort to please, always names a number lower than he wants. Charlie may say, oh, I'll come for 43. And then Charlie will interview a couple more times, regain his confidence, say, I told him I wanted 43, but I really want 45. Handle it for me, will you? he'll say to you guys. And then, of course, the company's going to start negotiating down from the number that Charlie gave them, which is 43. And then we have a mess. Don't let Charlie name a number. Charlie, here's what you should wear tomorrow. Tell him exactly what to wear. Don't assume that a six-figure candidate knows how to dress like a six-figure candidate. I can tell you too many horror stories about big shot executives who went on interviews wearing blue pinstripe suits and yellow argyle socks, and the company never finds it amusing. Doesn't reflect well on the candidate and doesn't reflect well on you either. Now, some men are uncomfortable telling other men or women what to wear. Women seem to be comfortable telling anybody what to wear. But if you're uncomfortable telling someone what to wear, at the very least, tell them how they dress out there and that they hire in their own image. Get that message across. Charlie, when you're out there, if you like what you're hearing, if you want that job, tell them, I want to come to work here. What do I do next? Some recruiters say, but I don't want my candidate to seem too eager. Baloney. Let your candidate declare himself. If that employer has two people sitting in front of them, and one of them is saying, I really want to come to work for you. I want to come to work here. And the other candidate is saying, show me, baby. This first candidate's going to get the job. He's going to get it all the time because they're going to feel better chemistry with him. Let him declare himself. And Charlie, call me immediately after you leave this interview. Now, last thing we're going to say to Charlie. Charlie, I am reviewing my notes. You said that you would accept $43,000 for the right opportunity. Is that right? No, I said I'd take 43 for a perfect opportunity. This is the second time we've talked to Charlie about specific numbers. You know what I hear recruiters doing all the time? Charlie, will you take mid-40s? Yeah, I'll take mid-40s. And they go to John over at the company. John, will you take mid-40s? Sure. Will you offer a mid-40s? Sure. We'll offer a mid-40s. So you have a candidate who's ready to take mid-40s and a company that's ready to offer a mid-40s. What does that company hear when they hear mid-40s? 42, 43. What does Charlie hear when he hears mid-40s? 47. So you get a $42,000 offer out for a candidate who swore you were talking 47. No, don't talk mid-40s, mid-40s. Talk specific dollars. Remember, we are closing this candidate. We've got him at 43 now. We've got that company, hopefully, at 46. That's where we want them. We want to keep a spread between the candidate and the company. All right, Charlie, good luck. Call me tomorrow immediately after you leave. Now, let's go back to John. Let's get John back on the phone. Hi, John. This is Tony Byrne. I want to confirm Charlie's interview tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock. Now, John, let me tell you a little bit more about Charlie. Let me tell you what it's going to take to get him. We are now going to describe Charlie's needs to John, and every candidate has needs. Charlie may need for his vacations to coincide with his wife's vacations because he works. He may need to see a career path that leads from group to division over 5 years. He may need to qualify for their tuition reimbursement program because he goes to law school at night. Every candidate has needs. Tell that company now, before he goes in, what the candidate's needs are. Some recruiters say, but I don't want to make it look like my candidate is making demands. Your candidate is not making demands. See, that company is either going to like him or they're not. And if they like him, they're going to want to do what they have to do within reason to get the candidate. So load their gun. Give them some ammunition. Tell them what it's going to take so that if they start liking Charlie right out of the barrel, they can start doing what they need to do to get him on board. All right, get off the phone with the company. Tomorrow afternoon, 1 o'clock, interview takes place. 4:30, Charlie calls us. That sounds about right. He had 3 one-hour interviews. He's calling us at 4:30. How'd it go, Charlie? Great. I like the people that I met. I like the company. I want to go to work there. Good. All right, Charlie, how long were you there? Well, I was there for about 3 hours, a little more. Who'd you talk to, Charlie? Met with 3 guys, group, district, and division. Charlie, what did you think of each of those guys personally? I hope he liked them. Because if he didn't like them, he's not going to go to work for them. He may think they're the greatest accountants in the world, but if he didn't like them, he won't go to work for them. And I'll tell you this, if he did like them, I bet you they liked him too. That's the way chemistry works. If they hit it off, they probably hit it off. Charlie, could you work with these guys? Oh, yeah. How'd they describe the job to you, Charlie? Well, just like you described, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Or you may find that you fine-tune your job order a little bit on the first interview debrief. Charlie says, well, it's a little more of this, a little less of that. That's good. But let's assume right now that we are debriefing a one who is a perfect fit for the job. Charlie, can you do that job? You ever had a candidate say, no, but I can learn fast? Our companies don't want to pay us $10,000 for somebody who can learn fast. And our first closing question, Charlie, do you want the job? Now here's where recruiters start compromising and making mistakes. What is the range of acceptable answers to that question? Charlie, do you want the job? Yes. That is the only acceptable answer to the question. That's the only one we're going to work with. It's perfectly legitimate for the candidate to say yes, as long as my vacation coincides with my wife's vacation. Yes, as long as I can qualify for the tuition reimbursement program. Yes, as long as I can see a career path that leads from group to division over 5 years. Those are all contingent yeses. That's all right. We can solve that. But when the candidate starts coming out of there saying, I don't know, I don't think so, don't sell, don't arm twist. Educate. See, selling here should be educating. If by educating the candidate we can cause him to be interested, if he's interested, as long as we can solve a problem and we can solve the problem, go ahead and do it. But don't start arm twisting here, because all you're going to do is force somebody to say, yeah, I'll go on another interview, who really doesn't want to go on that interview when you should be finding somebody who'd really want that job. Now, Charlie, how'd they leave it with you? Well, I said, I really want to come to work here, guys. What do I do? And they said, Charlie, come on back in next Tuesday. We want you to meet 2 group VPs. Where have we heard that before? Huh? On the job order. On the job order. They said that they were going to bring the finalists back to meet 2 group VPs. Remember? Good news. See, and if we hadn't pressed when we were taking that job order, we wouldn't know that right now. Okay, Charlie, did the subject of money come up? Yeah, they asked me how much it was going to take to get me over here. And I said, frankly, guys, I want to see how much you think I'm worth. Wouldn't that be great if candidates were that glib? Actually, if you could just get your candidate to refrain from saying a number, you're lucky. Once again, Charlie, is there anything that could hold this up? Time is everything. Anything personal? Anything medical? Are you interviewing anywhere else? Now, recruiters, some people will tell you that you can't believe anything that a company says to you, anything that a candidate says to you. Well, not me. I'm going to tell you that you have to believe everything that an employer says to you and everything that a candidate says to you. Otherwise, you can't function. With one small exception, and it's right here. A candidate who is interviewing somewhere else will often say he's not when you ask him the first time before the first interview, because he doesn't want the fact that he is to prevent you from sending him out on this interview. So we ask him again. He'll tell you now, because now it's an issue. So don't punish him for telling you the truth. Just find out as much as you can about the other opportunity. Given equal offers from both of those companies, which one would he take? You know, we may have to make a judgment call. If he's favoring the other opportunity, I'd probably want to yank him from this until he goes the distance with the other one. If he's feeling equally about the two of them, let them both go forward. All right, Charlie, I am reviewing my notes. You said that you would accept $43,000 for the right opportunity. Is this the right opportunity? Well, Charlie may say, yes, this is the right opportunity. Charlie may say, well, as a matter of fact, I'm going to need 48. But let's assume maximum, optimal, positive, number one behavior. Charlie, who we've closed before tentatively at 43, comes out of that interview and says, I like that position so much that I will take it for 42. Has that ever happened to you before? Candidate lowers his number by 1,000? Sure. What's he telling us? Look at that interest-demand barometer. What's he telling us? Demand goes down, interest goes up. Demand goes down, interest goes up. The interest-demand barometer. If he came out of there saying, I want 48, demand goes way up, interest goes way down. Watch the interest-demand barometer. We've just debriefed a 1. Let us tune it down one notch. We're debriefing Charlie, and he's not saying no, but he's not saying yes either. We want to test Charlie. We want to find out whether or not he is, in fact, a 1. And the way to test a candidate is this. Charlie, I have 2 other people who want to interview at that company. Should I send them? What's a number 1 going to tell us? No way. And if Charlie then says, yeah, go ahead and send them out there, is Charlie interested in this position? No. Absolutely not. Let's tune it down one more notch. We're debriefing Charlie, and we say, Charlie, do you want the job? And Charlie says, I'm not sure, I don't know. Charlie, I am going to send 2 other people out to that firm. Go home and think about it. If you want to pursue it, you call me. In other words, the less interested Charlie seems, the harder I'm going to rip that job away from him, and the harder I'm going to make him work to get it back. Shouldn't arm twist, which is what recruiters start doing right here, which is why they spend weeks working on things that are never, ever, ever going to go together. If he doesn't want it, he doesn't want it. Find somebody else who does. Now let's debrief the company. John, I just got off the phone with Charlie. He is happy. He likes the guys he met, likes your company, wants to come to work for you. What did you think of him? It's an open question, designed to elicit a spontaneous answer. Now let me tell you about company behavior. John may not know that he's going to hire Charlie yet, but if he is going to hire him, this much is true. He now likes him. You'll never get to this point here, ask what'd you think of him, and have him say, oh, well, we're not sure, and then have him hiring him later. You want to look for a positive response here. Yeah, we like him. Yup, could be our guy. That kind of thing. Just a positive response. How long did you talk to him? Well, we talked to him for 3+ hours. Who talked to him? Well, 3 guys. Group, myself, and division. What did you think of him personally? You guys. We liked him. See, I hope they like him. Same principle applies. They may think he's the greatest accountant in the world, but if they didn't like him, they're not going to hire him. Is he the man for the job or she the woman for the job? If yes, why yes? Have him start rehearsing his reasons why he likes the candidate. And if no, why not? So that we can fine-tune our recruiting efforts. Now, I want to get the word offer into this conversation right now, the word offer. If it were going to be a first interview offer, we would say, are you going to make him an offer? But we are now going to ask, are you considering making him an offer? Could be. Yeah, could be. Well, and watch how we box him into a corner here. See, this is the beauty of having specific information. Most recruiters, if they got that answer, could be, to the question, are you considering making him an offer, would say, oh, good, 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 would go on to the next question. But you don't know anything yet. Are you considering making him an offer? Could be. Well, John, I understand you're bringing him back in next Tuesday to meet 2 group VPs. Yeah, that's right. You said you were going to meet the finalists, bring the finalists back to meet 2 group VPs. Is he the finalist? Yes, he is. You said you'd send the finalists home with an offer if the 2 group VPs liked him. Will you send Charlie home with an offer if the 2 group VPs like him? Yes, we will. Now, that's specific information. That we can work with. See, that's a real timetable. That's a plan. And we can work around that. We have just debriefed about as much of a 1. And, of course, on the first interview debrief, you want to remind the company, I think we can get him for 45. I am sure we can get him for 46. I think we can get him for 45. I'm sure we can get him for 46. I'm making a mistake. It's going to come back to haunt me. We want 46. Okay. Let's tune the company down one notch. Have you ever debriefed an employer and he's just not quite as enthusiastic as he was before? Just not quite? Well, let's test him. John, 2 of your competitors want to see Charlie. Should I send him out there? Now, if they want to hire Charlie, what are they going to say? No way. Put him on ice. Sit on him until we're through interviewing him. And if they now say, sure, send him on out there, do we have a placement happening here? Absolutely not. So test, test, test. Keep testing that candidate to make sure he's a number 1. Keep testing that employer to make sure that they have number 1 feelings towards the candidate. All right. We've taken a job order. We have recruited somebody. We have presented the candidate to the employer. We have prepped the candidate for the first interview. First interview's taken place. We have debriefed the candidate. There is continuing interest between the candidate and the company. It is time to check references. Okay, there is continuing interest between the candidate and the company past the first interview. The second interview is set. It is time to check references. When do you do them? Always, when there's continuing interest between the candidate and the company. Always do them. Don't get lazy. If the company says they're going to do them, you do them too. Aren't you curious about what the company is going to hear? I would be. Now, references can be used to overcome questions or objections that arise during the first interview. For instance, let's say that his employer says, we like him, but this position requires management ability, and his last 3 positions have been hands-on engineering positions. Well, we're going to go back to his references and ask about management ability, about initiative, about leadership, because that's their questions. We want to overcome questions or objections that arise during the first interview. Now, ideally, references will validate the candidate's ability to do the job. They will reinforce the company's impression of this candidate's ability to do this job. So the question should actually be different. You see, most recruiters don't do references properly. They ask questions on a form, and the questions say, what were the dates of employment? How much did he earn? Did he ever show up late for work? Was he a drinker, a gambler, a murderer? Well, we don't need to know that. We don't need to ask those questions. The questions that we want to ask should be designed to validate his ability to do the job. If he's a drinker or a gambler or a murderer, it is going to come out on those references, I assure you. Now, let's say the employer says we like him. They have no question. They have no objection. Then we're going to use those references just to reinforce their impression of his ability to do the job by talking to his references and saying, do you think he can do the job? Would you hire him to do this job? What did he do at your company that demonstrated his ability to do this job? Customize those references based on what the employer needs to know. Now, there is too much of a tendency on the part of recruiters to characterize references as good or bad. I often hear a recruiter saying, you know, I've got 4 good references and 1 bad one, and I don't know what to do with the bad one. Well, if you talk to that recruiter, you discover that he has a reference from an employer who worked with him 5 years ago who says he had a personality conflict with someone at the plant. That is not necessarily a bad reference. You should not characterize references on behalf of the employer. Check all references all the time. Always give them to the employer and let them draw their own conclusions. You know, if they're fabulous references, they can only help. If they're average references, as 90% of them are, they can neither help nor hurt. And if they're lousy references, then you have an obligation to give them to the employer. Don't characterize. Example, 5 years ago, I got job orders for 2 marketing managers from one of our client companies, East Coast and West Coast marketing managers for a microwave antenna company. The positions were $80K positions with bonuses that put them up over $100,000. I put my West Coast electronics marketing guy on these spots, and he filled the first one in about 2 weeks. Then he went to work on the East Coast position, and he was moaning and groaning for the first 2 days. I said, what's the matter, Paul? He said, well, this East Coast position was in a facility that was 100 miles from any place. It was in a real backwater in New Jersey. There was nothing within 100 miles of there but rivers, woods, and this facility. And he needed a real sharp pinstripe marketing guy. Well, I said, hang in there. He did. I checked in with him a week later, I said, how's it going? He said, great, problem solved. I said, well, tell me about it. He said, I found a guy who is 6'2", eyes are blue. He's a genius. He comes to work like a house on fire. I said, great, 6'2", eyes are blue, huh? How'd you find that out? He's in California, candidate's in New Jersey. How'd you find that out? Oh, the candidate told me. I said, the candidate told you he's 6'2", eyes are blue? He said, yeah. I said, tell me more about him, Paul. He said, well, he's worked at 5 great companies. Worked at Procter & Gamble, General Mills, Colgate, Palmolive. He reeled off 5 terrific companies. I said, gee, that's wonderful. How old is the guy? He's 27 years old. And he's available right now. I said, Paul, have you checked his references? Paul said, no, I don't need to. I've already presented him to the company. They're going to make him an offer. They love him. They say he's 6'2", eyes are blue. He's a genius. He comes to work like a house on fire. I said, Paul, check his references. You know that's part of the service that we provide. Well, Paul did. He went and he checked his references and came back in about an hour just as white as a sheet. And I said, what's the matter, Paul? And he said, well, I just spoke to his 3 previous employers, 3 most recent employers, and they all said the guy is 6'2", eyes are blue, he's a genius, he comes to work like a house on fire. And then at the end of 9 months, something snaps. He starts showing up late if he shows up at all, and after a year, he was gone. I got the same story from 3 employers. I said, well, gee, Paul, you better check with his original 2 employers, and Paul did, and he got exactly the same story. Well, I said, Paul, sorry, I told you to check those references, but you know we can't withhold this information from the client. You've got to tell them what you heard. But don't characterize it as good or bad. Just tell them what you heard and keep searching because you're going to have to find somebody else. So Paul called him up. He did give them the references. He didn't characterize it as good or bad, and he did continue the search. And wouldn't you know it, 2 days later, the company called up the candidate, made him an offer, and hired him. Well, after about 3 weeks, I just couldn't stand it anymore. I had to know why. And I called up the president, who was a casual acquaintance of mine, a guy named Larry, and I said, Larry, you got to tell me, why did you hire him? We didn't think the references were that good. And Larry said, Tony, no, the references were not that good. But you didn't check references on us, did you? And I said, no, why? He said, the position stinks. Said, we've been through 4 people in the last year. We haven't been able to keep a person in this position for longer than 4 months. It is a real bad spot. We're thrilled to death to get him. The guy wound up going to work there and staying there for a year, which is 4 times as long as anybody had ever had the position before. The point of this is that one person's turkey is another person's hero. If we had done those references early enough, we would have yanked this guy right out of the process. And yet here he was, the perfect candidate for that position, and they were thrilled to death to get him. Don't make decisions on behalf of the employer. Check the references and let them make the decision. Another reference story to show you how how references can influence deals in ways that you would never expect ahead of time. You guys know what corn nuts are? It's a snack food. 10 years ago, I was doing a search for the corn nuts plant in the Bay Area of San Francisco, and I found 5 snack food and confection guys. And to make a long story short, one guy was going back for his 3rd interview, a guy named Arnold, to get his offer. I knew what the number was. He knew what the number was. He was going in to get and take the offer. So Arnold went in. He called me after the 3rd interview, and he said, Tony, I didn't get the offer. I said, well, let me find out what happened, Arnold. And I called the board member I was dealing with and said, what happened to Arnold's offer? And he said, oh, don't worry. Mix up in communications. Get Arnold back in here next Tuesday. We'll make him the offer. So Arnold went back in next Tuesday, told to expect an offer, ready to take the offer. And he called me after the interview, and he said, Tony, they didn't make me an offer. And he was real upset, real upset. I said, Arnold, let me find out what happened. I called the board member, what happened to Arnold's offer? And he said, no excuses, no excuses. Get Arnold back in here next Tuesday. We'll make the offer. So Arnold went back in next Tuesday for his 5th interview, told to expect the offer, ready to take the offer, and he called me from the interview. And he said, Tony, they don't have the offer ready. I said, Arnold, let me find out what's happening. I called the board member. Where's Arnold's offer? And he says, oh, we have it. I said, great. He said, but we're not ready to give it to him yet. I said, why not? He said, Tony, did you know that Arnold weighs over 400 pounds? This is a snack food plant, remember. And I said, no, I didn't know that. And they said, well, we like Arnold, but we're concerned about his weight and how it affects his ability to perform. Have you checked his references? And I hadn't. I always did, but I hadn't this time. I said, keep him busy. I'll do it right now. I called up his 3 previous employers, which were all chocolate factories up in the Bay Area. And I said, I understand that Arnold is heavy. Does it affect his ability to do the job? And they all said, no, Arnold is a good food man, light on his feet, he's a good manager. One guy cracked. He said, Arnold likes to eat the profits. He samples off the line. But they all gave me great references. And I went back to the company and I said, okay, here are the references. And the board member said, all right, based on that, we will make Arnold an offer right now. But Tony, one more thing. We want you to sign a piece of paper saying that if Arnold dies in the next year, you will replace him for free. Now, I just finished telling you this morning that I don't like 30-day guarantees. I had never heard the word guarantee used in connection with this business 10 years ago, so I said, sure, go ahead and send me the piece of paper. And they did, and I signed it. And last time I checked, last year, 9 years later, Arnold was still there crunching corn nuts. But the moral of this story is this. Time kills all deals. It kills all deals. Because I hadn't checked those references, this deal was dragging on and on. They could have had a walk-in, they could have had an internal referral, and I would have lost this one. You see, I always used to ask my references, what does the guy look like? Because I never used to meet my candidates. I worked long distance all the time. Check references. But of course, what's the further irony? The further irony is that if I had checked the references early, I never would have sent Arnold in. Ever. I would have decided this guy can't possibly do the job, and they'd never hired him, and I would have found somebody else. Don't play God. Don't make decisions on behalf of the employer. Find them what they say they want, check those references, give the whole kit and caboodle to the employer, and let him make his own decision. Now, still under the heading of references, I want to discuss something called lost wages litigation. There's a whole new body of law called lost wages litigation, which is affecting our ability to get references. Let me describe it anecdotally. Ampex comes to me and says, Tony, we need a bookkeeper. So I go and find Susie. I present Susie to Ampex. Ampex says, yes, we like her. Check references on her. So she gives me the name of 5 references. While I'm checking references on her, Ampex interviews Mary, likes her, and makes her an offer. Now Susie decides that maybe it was her references that prevented her from getting this job. Now, the day that we can no longer protect the identities or protect the people who give us references, we won't be able to get references anymore. You see, we can get them now because we can get Susie to name references for us, and we can use our own networks to get backdoor references. Companies don't give references. They just don't give them anymore because of lost wages litigation. And they're advising a lot of their employees not even to give off-the-record references. We can still get them. But the day that Susie starts filing suit against Roger for giving her a bad reference, we will not be able to get references anymore. Protect the people who give you references. Now, still, on this matter of references, I have one more point I want to make here, and it has to do with letters of recommendation. Somebody gave me an article from a West Coast newspaper. I think it's a riot, and it really proves the point. I want to read it to you. It's called How to Recommend Nerd, Avoid Lawsuit. If you were considering an applicant for employment and received a letter of recommendation that said, in my opinion, you will be very fortunate to get this person to work for you, would you hire the person, turn him away, or ask the writer for more details? The only sensible answer is the last, because, as a moment's scrutiny makes clear, the letter just as aptly describes a lazy employee as a valuable one. I'll read the sentence again. In my opinion, you will be very fortunate to get this person to work for you. The sentence is an example of a technique developed by Robert J. Thornton, a professor of economics at Lehigh University. Thornton calls his technique LIAR, L-I-A-R, for lexicon of inconspicuously ambiguous recommendations. He says, there must be 1 million people out there suffering from the problem of how to write a letter of recommendation for a person who isn't really qualified. The problem is worsened, Thornton points out, in a society where people have become quick to sue and where, of late, the courts have opened employment records to litigious employees looking for ammunition. Now, liar letters, whether perceived correctly or not, are virtually litigation-proof, Thornton says. To describe a candidate who is hopelessly incompetent, Thornton would have you write, I most enthusiastically recommend this candidate with no qualifications whatsoever. To describe a candidate who is so unproductive that the job would be better left unfilled, he suggests, I can assure you that no person would be better for the job. To describe a candidate who is not worth further consideration, I would urge you to waste no time making this candidate an offer of employment. With a little practice, it is a game anyone can learn to play. To describe a candidate about whom nothing can be praised, I cannot say enough to honestly recommend this person for employment, or it would be impossible to accurately describe the candidate's qualifications. The point is, read your letters of recommendation real carefully these days, folks, because often they're not worth the paper that they are printed on. We have checked references. Second interview is coming up tomorrow. It is time to prepare the candidate and the company for the second interview. The key questions in second interview prep are to the candidate. If the employer makes you an offer of, anybody remember what number Charlie has closed at? What number? 42. He came out and closed himself at 42, remember? If the employer makes you an offer of $42,000 tomorrow, are you prepared to accept, and when would you like to start? If the employer makes you an offer of $42K tomorrow, are you prepared to accept? What is the range of acceptable answers to that question? Yes. Yes, we know that in the safety of this room, don't we? But when we get on that phone and start asking the candidate, are you prepared to accept tomorrow, he doesn't always say yes, does he? He starts saying things like, well, I'd like to think about it, or I have another offer. Actually, sometimes he has another offer and he doesn't tell us he has that other offer. We'll get there in a second. But he starts saying things like, I want to think about it. Well, let me back up for a second. It is your role as the broker of this placement to make sure that the candidate has done all his thinking before that offer comes out. By the time we get to this stage, that thinking should be done. There should be nothing left to think about. So that when you say, if that company makes you an offer of $42,000, remember, you've been asking them all along, what are you prepared to accept? 43, 42, he's closed at 42. Company makes you an offer of $42,000 tomorrow, you're prepared to take it. Yes. Company makes you an offer of $42,000 tomorrow, you're prepared to take it. Well, I'm going to need a week to think about it. Great. We'll put the offering interview off for a week. Do not let the offer be extended to a candidate who is not prepared to accept it. That offer is currency. It spends, but it can't spend when it's in the possession of somebody who's neither accepting nor rejecting it. It's on ice. It's in suspended animation. Make sure that when that candidate gets the offer, he is ready to take it, and don't let him get it until then. Now, Tony, come on, this is real life. Isn't it reasonable to let that candidate think about it for a little while? Well, what's a little while, guys? What's a little while? Is a little while 4 days? No, that's not reasonable at all. Is a little while an hour? Yeah, that's reasonable. Is it reasonable for the candidate to go out to dinner with his wife tonight and discuss it one last time? Sure. Bring it in tomorrow morning and sign it? Sure. Is it reasonable for the candidate to hold on to it for 2 days? I don't think so. Why does he need to hold on to it? What does he need to think about for 2 days that he hasn't thought about already? No, that candidate should be ready to take that offer. But we say to the candidate, offer comes out tomorrow at 42, are you ready to take it? He says, yes. Good. Let's move on to the company. John, are you prepared to extend an offer tomorrow of $46,000? And if Charlie takes it, when would you like him to start? Now, remember, that employer has been telling us if the two group VPs like him, he's the finalist, two group VPs like him, will send him home with the offer. So we know what their plan is. Now, it's the night before the offering interview. We say, John, if the two group VPs like him tomorrow, you're going to send him home with an offer? And he says, well, we're going to need a week. Has that ever happened to you? We're going to need a week. Now, of course, in the absence of specific information about what their plan was, if he said we're going to need a week, we just have to say, okay, great. But we know they had intended to send the finalists home with the offer, right? So now how can we read it? Going to send them home with an offer tomorrow, Charlie? Well, we're going to need a week. What does it probably mean? There's another candidate in there. That's right. See, I want to teach you how to read the situation. Almost always means there's another candidate in there. So now you can ask the question, are you interviewing someone else? Well, as a matter of fact, another recruiter called us on Tuesday and presented a candidate, sounded kind of good. We have an interview set up with him tomorrow. We just want to take a look at him before we make a final decision. Which is why it always drives me nuts to hear a recruiter say, it's too late for me to get involved in this search. They already have someone they want to make an offer to. What better time to get involved in a search than when they're in a decision-making mode and they have a point of reference, a standard for comparison. I wish I could get involved in every search at the finish line. You'd be able to get instant feedback, get your deals put together fast all the time. That's the best time to get involved in a deal. Think how many of your own deals have been blown to bits at the last minute by some other recruiter's candidate. I wish we could get involved in every search at the last minute. So John says, yeah, we're going to see somebody else. Let's take the next scenario. We say, John, you're prepared to extend an offer tomorrow, $46,000, and if he accepts, when would you like him to start? And John says, well, if the two group VPs like him tomorrow, we're going to make him an offer, but we can't have it ready by tomorrow. It's going to take us a few days to get it written. Has that ever happened to you? Now, I don't want to disillusion the new guys here, but some companies are just a little flaky, and they just can't get it done. Now, here's where a recruiter with influence is going to make things happen. See, a recruiter with influence, a recruiter who has a real strong client relationship, is going to march into that client. He's going to pull people off the phone. He's going to get people out of meetings. He's going to find out where the log jam is. He's going to go right there and blow it to pieces. He's going to get that offer moving, going to get it signed off. See, that's what an influential recruiter can do. He can make things happen. That's his job, to make things happen. Some recruiters take the role of bystander, of observer, of good guy, of commentator. That is not the role of a recruiter. The role of a recruiter is to get in there and make the hire happen. That's what the company's paying him for. And if that means moving people along, pulling people out of meetings, getting the offer signed off, so be it. You know, we recruiters are always telling our candidates, be decisive, show them what you're made of. When they make that offer, take it, take it, take it, take it. Same thing applies to the companies. Big shot recruiter is going to go into this company and say, you know what? You've been promising this candidate an offer at the second interview, make it, or else it'll make you look bad. I mean, you've guaranteed them that the offer is going to be ready. Show them that you're decisive. Show them that you can make things happen. Get it done. Recruiter's going to tell a company that. Next scenario, night before the offering interview. Talking to John, we say, John, are you prepared to extend an offer tomorrow? John says, if the two group VPs like him, we are going to send him home with an offer tomorrow. All right? Charlie's prepared to take it. They're prepared to extend it. Should we let that interview take place? Yes! You bet! You bet! All right, so the second interview takes place tomorrow. Charlie calls us after the second interview, and the key questions in second interview debrief of candidate are, Charlie, did they make you an offer? How much is it? Did you accept it? When would you like to start? Key questions in second interview debrief of the company are, did you extend an offer? How much is it? Did he accept it? When would you like him to start? And there is an infinite variety of combinations of answers to those questions, and they constitute the subject of closing. Closing a deal is generating an offer, an acceptance, and a start date. Now, there's a simple formula for closing, and it is Getting the company to extend an offer which is equal to or higher than the dollar figure you've prepared your candidate to accept. Getting the company to extend an offer which is equal to or higher than the dollar figure you've prepared your candidate to accept. Now, the night before the offering interview is the wrong time to start closing. You see, the candidate already knows what he wants. Company already knows what they're going to offer him. The positions are already locked in place. The right time to start closing this deal is the very first time you talk to the candidate about the company, and we did. Back in step number 5, we did. And we closed the candidate at 44. What's the minimum amount of money that you would take? 44, and then we moved him down to 43, and he subsequently moved himself down to 42. That's where we closed him. And the first time that you talked to the company about the candidate, and we did, we said, I think it's going to take 45. I'm sure you can get him for 46. We want to keep that spread. We want to keep the company at 15%. We want to keep the candidate at 5%. Now, I want to tell you about the law of inverse gravity. There is a principle at work in your closes known as inverse gravity, and it works like this. No matter what number you close the candidate at, he goes to bed every night thinking to himself, should I have asked for more? Could I have gotten more? No matter what number you close him at. I mean, you can close him at 50%. He would be wondering if he should have asked for 60%. There's upward gravity on his number. Now, continuing with the law of inverse gravity, we have downward gravity on the company's number. We've closed them at 42. We've closed them, rather, at 46. Now, personnel brings that offer over to compensation. And compensation says 46? No way. This guy's got 5 years experience and a 2.9 GPA. The best I can do for this candidate is 44. Compensation brings it over to the line manager. Line manager says 44, not a chance. I've got guys in this group with 10 years experience who are only earning 39. Best I can do for them is 43. You see, there's downward gravity on the number at the company end, upward gravity on the candidate end. Now, a new recruiter typically doesn't start dealing with those numbers until the offer's about to come out, because the new recruiter has had his hands full with the process up to this point. And then when the offer's about to come out, the new recruiter says, well, I better start dealing with the numbers. And he goes to the candidate, the $40,000 candidate. Says, will you take 44? Candidate says, yeah, I'll take 44. New recruiter goes to the company and says, he'll take 44. Will you offer him 44? Company says, yeah, we'll offer him 44. New recruiter goes, great. I got a candidate who'll take 44 and a company that will offer 44. But you see, tonight that candidate goes to bed and starts thinking to himself, yeah, I said 44, but I'd really like 45. Reverse gravity. And that company puts its $44,000 through the nibbler, and there's a nibbler at every company, and out comes that $44,000 offer at $43,000 for a candidate who wants a $45,000, and isn't that the longest mile? The $2,000 in between what a candidate wants and what the company offers. Well, how do you solve that problem? How do you fix it? You correct for it early. Real early, and we did. You correct for it by closing the candidate low and closing the company high, and we did. We closed the candidate at 46, candidate at 42, the company at 46, and then hopefully, after inverse gravity takes place and the candidate wants more and the company offers less, they'll still come in with an offer in excess of what the candidate is prepared to accept. That's how you close a deal. Now, it is the night before the offering interview. We say to John, John, how much is the offer? John has got the offer sitting in front of him right now. Sitting in front of him. And remember, we've had 4 conversations with John about specific dollars. There should be no surprises here. We've been talking 45, 46, 45, 46. John, how much is the offer? 42. That ever happened to you? Company comes in with a whole different number than you've been talking about? Well, if you haven't been talking numbers with the company up till now, you have no platform. You have absolutely no leverage, no ground to stand on at all. I mean, they've just come up with a number that they feel to be a fair number. But you have had conversations with the company. You've had 4 conversations. You've been discussing a specific number. They come in with 42. You think that's an accident? Is that an accident, that number, 42? No. Somebody, or maybe several people, sat down and decided, let's offer them 42. That's no accident. Company's doing the same thing that you were doing before. Remember, you were testing to see if there's any play, any give in the candidate's number? Well, see, some companies do that all the time with lowball offers. They try to see whether or not there is any give. You see, those companies know that some recruiters are going to say, oh, no, you present it to him and tell me what he says. And other recruiters are going to take that offer and try to shove it down the candidate's throat. See, some recruiters are going to act out of weakness, and other recruiters are going to act out of greed. That's why companies make lowball offers all the time. They know they're going to get 60 or 70% of them through, and they save hundreds of thousands of dollars a year doing it. You know how a strong recruiter is going to react to that offer? Recruiter who's already closed that company at 46, or thinks he's closed them at 46. He's going to say, John, that's not the number that we've been talking about. So he's going to draw a line. John, that's not the number that we've been talking about. We've been discussing a 15% offer. That's a 5% offer. John, would you leave your own company for 5%? Oh, of course not. Of course not. John, when your own employees have gotten 5% offers, have you succeeded in giving them counteroffers? Well, sure we have, of course. Well, John, you're setting yourself up for the same kind of thing with Charlie. Come in with a fair number now and you'll get him. Come in with a low number and you're going to wind up bidding against his own employer. Now, John, I'm not going to make that offer. You see, a strong recruiter, a recruiter who's standing on principle, will say, I'm not going to make that offer. He'll give it back to the employer. And you can't do that unless you've been discussing specific dollars. If you hadn't been discussing specific dollars, you'd have to make that offer. Now, most employers who have been discussing 45, 46 right up to this moment will go back and redo the offer. They tried, they failed, now they'll come in with a good number. Some employers will jawbone you a little bit. They'll say, all right, you know, of course, that we're going to have to put it back through Seattle and Cincinnati, and that will take 2 weeks. Which is a bunch of nonsense. If a company wants to put a piece of paper through the loop, they can do it in hours. Other companies will say, this is just a few, but other companies will say, okay, if you won't make that offer, we'll go around you and make it to them ourselves. 5 minutes ago, it was a lowball offer. Now it becomes a bad faith offer. If a company's going to go around you and extend a lowball offer that you won't extend, it becomes a bad faith offer. Now, your role in this whole equation is honest broker. You have to represent the interests of each party equally to the other until one party starts to act in bad faith. Then you have to advocate on behalf of the other. Company goes around you to extend the offer. Charlie now comes to you and says, they just made me an offer. I know, Charlie. It's $42,000. I know, Charlie. Did you tell him I was prepared to accept $42,000? No, I didn't. Charlie, if you have the right relationship with Charlie, he will now say, what do you think I should do? What do you think I should do? Now you have a problem. You see, you have assured Charlie that you would negotiate the best possible offer for him. He's got an offer in his hands which isn't the offer you think you negotiated. You don't think that is the best possible offer. Yet he's told you he would take $42,000. You got a $12,000 fee at stake, and he's asking you, what should I do? You got a problem. Well, ask him, what do you want to do? Charlie may say, I want to take it. Problem solved. Good. Accept it. Life is easy. Charlie may say, I want a little more money, which is probably why he came back to you in the first place, instead of just accepting it directly to the company. I want a little more money. And if he wants a little more money, make one more try. Go back to that company and ask for more money. The point is this. Put Charlie's interests in front of yours. Or if Charlie started to act in bad faith to the company, put their interests in front of yours. Never put your interests first. Never persuade Charlie to accept that lowball offer just because you have a fee at stake. You put the interests of the candidate first or the interests of the company first, and you will find that things fall into place naturally. Now, next scenario. It is the night before the offering interview. John has the offer on his table. We say, John, how much is the offer? John looks down and he says, $45,000. Now, this is a good faith offer, but now our mistake comes back to haunt us. Remember before we said to the company when we presented to the candidate and thereafter we said, I think you can get him for 45, I'm sure you can get him for 46. Recruiters have a tick, an affliction. They like to tell a company two numbers, the number they want and a number to soften the blow. Think about it. You know, there's always the number they want and a lower number. Well, I have never heard a company come in with the higher of two numbers when given a choice. They always come in with the lower of two numbers. If it's 46 you want, ask for 46. Don't soften the blow with 45. But this is a good faith offer. We said 45, 46, and he's made up an offer of 45. Okay. Now, here's how you properly extend an offer, by the way. You get John to give you the offer so that you can extend it to the candidate. And you get the candidate's authorization to accept at a number. That is the right way to get an offer extended. Because that way it's in your possession and the candidate accepts it without ever getting it in his possession. So we go to John. John, how much is the offer? He says $45,000. He gives us the offer. We go to Charlie, who has not authorized us to accept at $42,000. He has said he'd take it. An hour ago he said he'd take it at $42,000, but he's not authorized us to accept it. He says, I want it in my hands. So we go to Charlie and we say, Charlie, congratulations. Here's an offer. It's a $45,000 offer. And he says, thank you. Now I want to think about it. Has that ever happened to you before? Candidate gets the offer in his hand, having told you he would take it, and now he wants to think about it? Well, stay cool. Don't get upset. Candidate fooled us. See, we didn't want this to happen. We wanted that candidate to accept it. But he didn't. He has it in his hands, and now he says he wants to think about it. Well, we got to work this out. Charlie, what do you want to think about? I want to think about it. Yeah, Charlie, but what do you want to think about? Well, I just want to live with it a little bit. You heard that before? Charlie, what do you want to think about? Come on, get off my back. I just want to think about it. Of course, then we get to the real question. Well, Charlie, how long do you want to think about it? Well, I want to think about it until a week from Thursday at 4:30. Why does Charlie want to think about it until a week from Thursday at 4:30? Charlie, are you interviewing somewhere else? Well, I didn't want to tell you this, but I got another call from a recruiter on Monday, and they said they wanted to send me out to Raytheon. And I said, look, guys, I'm getting an offer on Thursday. And they said, Charlie, go out there, move fast. So I went out and I talked to these guys, and they're nice guys, but I said, I'm getting an offer from this company, so you're going to have to move real fast. And they said, Charlie, we're going to make you an offer too. You come back next Thursday and we'll make you an offer. And Tony, I just want to have both offers in my hand at the same time so I can make a decision between the two. You ever heard that before? Oh, yeah. Yeah, all right. Let's do a little logic lesson. Candidate has your offer in this hand. Wants to wait 9 days to get another offer in this hand so that he can make a decision between the two. Which one does he want? All the time he wants this one. He doesn't wait 9 days to get this offer in his hand so that he can let it go. He waits 9 days to get an offer in this hand so that he can let yours go. Sure, all the time. So we can determine that he's going to wait 9 days so that he can get both offers in his hand. We're going to deprive him of that opportunity. We're going to say, Charlie, look, I'm going to have a deadline put on this offer. I'm going to make it expire in 3 days. We're going to force Charlie to decide up and down on this offer based on the merits of this offer. Now, some recruiters are going to say, but Tony, that might force him to turn it down. Yes, to liberate it so that your second candidate can get it. Unless you don't have the second candidate. You see, then you have to just sit back and watch your deal die slowly. day by day, hoping against hope that he really, really does just want to make a decision between the two when you know better. Other recruiters might say, but Tony, if you put a deadline on that offer, that might cause him to accept it, force him to accept it, with the expectation of turning it down when he gets the other offer. You'd think so, wouldn't you? But in practice, that calls for a streak of dishonesty. And most people are honest. If he's intending to take the other offer, he just will turn this one down and take the other one. Next scenario, night before the offering interview. We go to John. John, how much is the offer? John says $45,000. He gives it to us. We go to Charlie, who has authorized us. He has authorized us to accept at $42,000. And we say, Charlie, congratulations. You have a new job. And the offer is $45,000. Charlie goes nuts. He says, I accept. Some of these things do go together, you know. All right? He says, I accept. And we say, Charlie, when do you want to start? And he says, 2 weeks from Monday. Good. I'm glad you're being so sober about it, because you're right. Deal's not closed yet. You see, when Charlie accepts that offer, the deal is still not closed, because he's got to resign. And if he's half the guy that your client company thinks he is, they're not going to want to lose him. And enormous pressure will be brought to bear to keep him where he is. Now, this pressure can take the form of a counteroffer. It can take the form of a title or a promotion. It can take the form of peer pressure. You know, in some large companies, employees get 10 attaboys in their personnel file if they can talk somebody out of leaving. You'd be surprised what someone will do for 10 attaboys. This pressure to stay can take the form of expressions of love and respect. Charlie goes in to resign, and all of a sudden VPs start coming out of the woodwork saying, oh, Charlie, we need you. You're important. I've seen a lot of deals go away just because a guy who felt overlooked, unloved, unappreciated, got a lot of strokes when he went in to resign. You see, companies realize that it is less expensive to give a little money, title, a few promises to keep an existing employee than it is to bring in a new employee who's going to cost more money, for whom there's going to be a fee, and who they're going to have to train. Now, most deals that are lost right here. And most of those are lost because of inadequate preparation. You got to explain to Charlie well in advance that when he goes in to resign, he's going to be exposed to that company's resignation drill. Every company has one. It's written down in memo form. They practice it time and again. They've executed it lots. The objectives of different drills are different. For instance, some companies, the drill is you go in to resign, and they show you right to the door with pictures of your kids in the shoebox. In that case, the objective of the drill is to get you right off the premises as quickly as possible. At other companies, the objective of the drill is to get information from you. You go in to resign, and all the doors start slamming around you. And stern-looking VPs start coming in saying, who took you out of here? And where are you going? And what information are you taking with you? You know, when they do mind control on you for 6 hours, the drill is designed to get information. At other companies, the drill is designed to keep you there. And sometimes it can be very subtle, very insidious. Charlie goes in to resign. And they say, oh, Charlie, sorry to lose you. You're such a good guy. Don't know what we're going to do without you. But go on back to your desk. We'll make life as easy as possible for you over the next 2 weeks. And then Charlie goes back to his desk, and tomorrow, a couple of his coworkers take him out to lunch, tell him what a critical member of the team he is and how hard it's going to be to work without him. Thursday, his boss takes him out for a beer, and they talk shop, football, the promotion he was going to get next quarter. This weekend, the president of the company pulls up to his house in a Rolls Royce to take he and his wife to the country club. The president, of course, who never said hello to him before. They may even go so far as having a going-away party for him, give him a couple of glasses of champagne, then say, Charlie, one more thing we want to run by you. One more thing we want to run by you. If they want to keep Charlie, there's a lot they can do. They can appeal to loyalty, to guilt, to vanity. Strong human emotions. Often with great success do they appeal to these emotions. Now, we are on the telephone conversation where Charlie has just accepted this offer. He's accepted it. He is sky high. Charlie, congratulations. You made a good decision. Ampex has big plans for you. Here's what they are. Now, Charlie, let's get right back to business. When do you plan to give notice? Press for an immediate resignation. If he stalls giving notice, this is a bad sign. When do you plan to give notice? Well, tomorrow. What time, Charlie? Hadn't thought about it. Well, pick a time. 10 o'clock. Great. Write it down in your book. 10 o'clock resignation. I'm going to write it down in my book. 10 o'clock Charlie resignation so that I can coordinate my schedule with yours. Get him to write it down in his book. It's a form of psychological commitment. 10 o'clock, resign. Charlie, I know you don't resign every day, so let me tell you what to expect. When you go in to resign, 3 things can happen. Number 1, they'll say, congratulations, do your 2 weeks. We wish you the best of luck. Sorry to lose you. Of course, we hope that's what happens. Then again, that might be their resignation drill. We don't know. Second thing that might happen is they'll say, Charlie, pack up your things and leave immediately. And if that's the resignation drill at this company, Charlie's seen it happen to other people. He's told us, and we've already arranged for him to be put on the payroll at the new company. And the third thing that might happen, and this is what I bet is going to happen, and recruiters, this is the most common resignation drill of all. Third thing that might happen, Charlie, is they'll say, Charlie, put off your decision for 2 days. We want to talk to you about it once more. You see, when Charlie goes in to give notice, he's slam dunking them. They're losing a negotiation they didn't even know they were in. And what do you do when you're losing a negotiation? Time out. That's right. It's the oldest ploy in the book, and that's probably what they're going to do to Charlie. Now, Charlie, when they ask you for time, you've got to tell them it's not a decision that can be put off. It's been made. It's history. It's final. Now, Charlie, is there anything your company could do to keep you? What's the number 1 going to tell us? It's going to say nothing. He's going to give you chapter and verse about his original reasons for wanting to make a change, about the things that Ampex has in store for him. Nothing they could do to keep me. If Charlie now says, well, if they made me an offer, I'd have to think about it. Is he a number 1? No. Are we in trouble? Do we have a problem? You bet. You bet. Now, I'll tell you this. There is no way that we could get here. If we've been doing our job right, there's no way we could get up to this point and then be surprised by that answer. I mean, we would have flushed that out a long time ago if we're doing our jobs right, but let's say we haven't flushed it out. We did get here. We say, Charlie, is there anything your company could do to keep you? And he says, yes. What we now have to do is talk him out of even considering that counteroffer before we take the offer away from him. Now he has the offer. We just have to convince him not to consider the counteroffer. Now, some recruiters have trouble convincing a candidate not to take a counteroffer. They feel that they have a conflict of interest. They have a fee at stake. So they can't be convincing when they go to discuss this situation with the candidate. Well, I'll tell you, I can talk any candidate out of accepting a counteroffer. I can talk your candidates or my candidates, anybody. You know why? Because in my years in this business, I've had lots of people take counteroffers. And a lot of my employees' candidates have taken counteroffers. I've seen them bite the carrots. I've had them believe the promises. I've had them turn down wonderful opportunities. And then I've had them back on the phone 6 months later saying, Tony, can you get me that offer now? And I've had to tell these guys, sorry. You know, we're messengers of opportunity. We crossed your life at that moment with a perfect opportunity for you to move up. You didn't take it, it's gone. Opportunity is a perishable commodity. And I have seen guys' careers end. I've seen them bend. I've seen them go backwards. I've seen guys confused, scared, broke, when they could have been sailing towards management. Yeah. See, I can talk to somebody before they take a counteroffer, before they even consider a counteroffer, and make them feel it, because I've seen too many people there. I've seen too many careers destroyed. Accepting a counteroffer is the most destructive thing that a person can do to his own career. But I'll tell you this, if you have a problem convincing a candidate not to accept a counteroffer, here's what I recommend you do. Start assembling a file of people who do accept counteroffers. And after 1 year, you will have a file of the best salesmen on this planet on the subject of why not to accept a counteroffer. Because you see, 9 out of 10 of those people will be on the street within 6 months. That's the statistic. That's Business Week's statistic. 9 out of 10 people who accept counteroffers are back on the street within 6 months. For 2 reasons. They've expressed disloyalty to the company. Company takes the first opportunity to get rid of them. And also, the reasons why they originally wanted to make a change in the first place still exist. So they're on the street within 6 months. Start assembling that file. And anytime you have somebody who's going to take a counteroffer, you put them on the phone with one of those folks. They'll do all the selling for you. Now, dictate letters of resignation from Charlie to his boss, and from Charlie to the director of personnel. The letter to Charlie's boss should say, "Dear boss, thank you for all of the knowledge I've gained during the years that I've worked with you. I've accepted a position with another company. My decision is final and irrevocable. Thank you. Truly yours. Goodbye." You should flesh it out a little bit. And the letter to the director of personnel should say, "I resign effective such and such a date. My decision is final and irrevocable. Thank you. Truly yours. Goodbye." Now, is that decision final and irrevocable? We hope it's final. The letters certainly don't make it irrevocable. The letters are one more psychological commitment. But dictate those letters. Say, "Charlie, I want you to type them up, sign them, and have them ready to hand off tomorrow morning before you go in to give notice." Now get off the phone with Charlie, call him up at 9:45 tomorrow morning. "You ready?" It's like a boxing match. He's going into the ring with Mike Tyson. "Are you ready?" "Yes." Get him pumped up. "Do you have the letters, Charlie?" "Good." Remember, you want to hand those off before you go in to give notice. Now remember, Charlie, when you go in there, you're going to be exposed to that company's resignation drill. We don't know what it is. They may make you a counteroffer. They are certainly going to ask you to buy time. Charlie, you got to tell them it's not a decision that can be put off. It's been made. It's final. The motive for getting you to put it off is to figure out a way to get you to stay until it's convenient for them to let you go. Charlie, they're going to appeal to guilt, to loyalty, to vanity. They're going to tell you you owe it to them to give them 2 days. You don't owe it to them. You owe it to your family to go home tonight with this thing resolved, with a clean slate. Now, send them in. In most cases, you'll get a call back from Charlie within an hour saying, "Yeah, I went in there, I did it, yeah, I was real nervous, but I told them that I was leaving. They tried to get me to stay. I told them there's nothing they could do to get me to stay, and I'm out of here in 2 weeks." In some cases, you'll get a call from Charlie in 2 hours from the corner with pictures of his kids in a shoebox. And then in some cases, you just can't get Charlie on the phone at all. Oh. And then when you finally do get him on the phone, he says, "I owe it to them. They just want 2 days. Does he owe it to them? No, no." And I'll tell you this, there is no good reason for Charlie to give them 2 days unless there is a slight inclination in his brain to stay at that company. No good reason. And if today ends with Charlie having given that company 2 days, they begun to win and Charlie has begun to lose. Now, let's say that it was a clean break. Charlie comes out of there and says, "I am out of there in 2 weeks." Great. Stay in touch with him during those 2 weeks. Bring him out to lunch. Call him every day so that if the weather starts to change, you know about it. Have the client company take he and his wife out to dinner. Have them bring Charlie over and show him his office. Introduce him to the people that he's going to be working with. Make him understand he's not just leaving a home. He is going to a home.